What if chaos has a conductor, a hidden hand guiding every disaster, a mind behind madness, walking among us? NYARLATHOTEP, the crawling chaos, a being of 1,000 masks, subtly warping reality. From ancient cults to modern-day manipulation, his touch is everywhere, unseen yet ever present. NYARLATHOTEP isn't just a monster from a story. He's the emissary of cosmic indifference, a being who delights in twisting human ambition to serve darker purposes. A key figure in Lovecraftian horror, NYARLATHOTEP is not merely a creature of claws and tentacles, but the embodiment of chaos and entropy itself, challenging our conventional understanding of order and control. He is a force that seeks to unravel the very fabric of reality, exposing the meaningless void beneath the surface of our perceived stability, reminding us that our grip on order might be far more tenuous than we believe. More than a simple monster, he represents an ancient power, a cosmic principle that undermines the foundations of civilization and sanity, a threat that is all the more terrifying because it often wears a human face. We'll reveal how NYARLATHOTEP's archetype can be found in charismatic cult leaders, corrupt politicians, and even technological advancements with unforeseen consequences. From the dark secrets of ancient Egypt and the Black Pharaoh archetype, to the modern-day manipulation of social media and the algorithms that shape our perceptions, the crawling chaos leaves his mark. Stick around to the end to discover how to recognize the signs of NYARLATHOTEP's influence and understand the forces that shape our world. We will look at these patterns and hidden mechanisms to see how they work in our lives. This video will demonstrate that NYARLATHOTEP is not just a fictional character, but a representation of real-world forces that manipulate and corrupt, challenging our perception of reality. Understanding this pattern is crucial to discerning the difference between genuine progress and carefully constructed chaos, and further, to recognize and resist the forces of chaos in the world today. By understanding this one figure, we can better identify manipulative influences in our day-to-day lives. Now you might think this is just fantasy, but Lovecraft's genius lay in tapping into primal fears about the unknown and the forces beyond our control, fears that resonate even more strongly today. We've all felt like pawns in someone else's game or wondered about the people in power actually pulling the strings. In a world of fake news and hidden agendas, now more than ever, it is important to look at the world with open eyes and question everything. So, let's dive in and explore the many faces of NYARLATHOTEP and the chaos he sows. To truly understand the crawling chaos, we must first delve into his genesis within the mythos crafted by H.P. Lovecraft. This will involve dissecting the evolution of NYARLATHOTEP's character across Lovecraft's stories, tracing his insidious influence from a mere messenger of strange wonders to a sinister embodiment of chaos itself. Prepare yourself, for within this exploration lies a disturbing revelation about manipulation and the precarious nature of reality. NYARLATHOTEP made his initial appearance in Lovecraft's 1920 prose poem of the same name, NYARLATHOTEP. Here, he emerges as a tall, swarthy man, almost pharaoh-like in his bearing, who arrives on Earth bearing strange electrical devices and demonstrations of bizarre science. This initial portrayal, while unsettling, presents him primarily as a bringer of knowledge, albeit knowledge, that inspires unease and madness. He then appears in The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, written between 1926 and 1927. Later in The Haunter of the Dark, 1935, NYARLATHOTEP's connection to ancient, malevolent artifacts becomes explicit, showcasing his role as a conduit for cosmic horrors. This evolution from a simple messenger to a manipulator of cosmic forces marks a pivotal shift in his character, setting the stage for his later interpretations as the embodiment of chaos and deception. But what is the true nature of NYARLATHOTEP's role as a messenger? It is far more complex than simple communication. He disseminates forbidden knowledge, whispers temptations, and manipulates individuals towards their own destruction, all while serving as an avatar of the outer gods. Is he simply a servant, blindly following the will of Azathoth and the other outer gods? Or does he harbor his own inscrutable agenda, relishing the chaos he sows? The ambiguity of his motives is a key aspect of his power. This uncertainty allows him to exploit the fears and desires of those he encounters, making him a far more effective agent of cosmic entropy than a simple servant could ever be. This ambiguity is the source of his true power. Consider the chilling descriptions from NYARLATHOTEP, where he enthralls audiences with demonstrations of otherworldly science and magic, leaving them in a state of ecstatic delirium, their minds open to cosmic horrors beyond human comprehension. His charismatic appeal, coupled with the unsettling nature of his demonstrations, serves as a potent tool for eroding sanity and paving the way for deeper corruption. Then, in the dream quest of unknown Kadath, NYARLATHOTEP toys with Randolph Carter, leading him on a perilous journey, only to betray him at the 11th hour, revealing the utter indifference of the cosmos to human aspirations. This manipulative interaction highlights his willingness to sacrifice individuals for his own inscrutable purposes. In The Haunter of the Dark, NYARLATHOTEP is tied to the shining trapezohedron, a crystal that unleashes unimaginable horrors upon those who gaze into it. As Lovecraft writes, he had come face to face with that which cannot be faced. He had looked upon the single shining trapezohedron and the horror that was unleashed. This direct connection to such a potent artifact underscores his role as a conduit for cosmic power and a harbinger of ultimate destruction. The significance of NYARLATHOTEP's messenger role within Lovecraft's cosmology is profound. It speaks to the utter indifference of the outer gods towards humanity, portraying them as beings of unimaginable power whose motives are beyond human comprehension. NYARLATHOTEP, as their emissary, embodies this indifference, acting as a catalyst for chaos and destruction without any discernible purpose or reason. Is this a reflection of the inherent chaos and unpredictability of the universe itself? Perhaps the old ones are simply forces of nature, like hurricanes or earthquakes, and NYARLATHOTEP is merely the herald of their destructive power. Furthermore, NYARLATHOTEP's manipulative abilities expose the inherent flaws and vulnerabilities of human nature. Our susceptibility to deception, our yearning for forbidden knowledge, and our blind ambition all make us easy prey for his machinations. He exploits these weaknesses, turning us against ourselves and paving the way for our ultimate downfall. The various forms he assumes, from the unsettlingly human to the monstrous Black Pharaoh, suggest that chaos can manifest in countless ways, adapting to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of any given society or individual. The Black Pharaoh is of particular note, embodying the corruption of power and the seductive allure of forbidden knowledge. NYARLATHOTEP, then, is more than just a monster. He is a manipulator, a messenger, and an embodiment of chaos. But how does this apply to our world? Can the characteristics he embodies be found in real-world figures and events? We are only scratching the surface of the darkness. Now, some might dismiss this connection between Lovecraftian horror and real-world events as mere fantasy, a fanciful interpretation of fiction. However, Lovecraft's genius lay in tapping into primal fears and archetypes that resonate across cultures and time periods. He understood the human psyche and the forces that drive us, both for good and for ill. While NYARLATHOTEP himself is a fictional entity, the patterns of manipulation, deception, and the abuse of power that he embodies are very real. Therefore, studying NYARLATHOTEP's archetype is not merely an exercise in literary analysis. It is a crucial step in learning to recognize and resist the manipulative forces that operate in our world. Understanding his motives, his methods, and his characteristics is essential for cultivating critical thinking and healthy skepticism. By understanding NYARLATHOTEP, we can learn to see the chaos around us, not as random events, but as potential manipulations, paving the way for something far more sinister. But can we truly confine NYARLATHOTEP to the realm of fiction? Or are his insidious tendrils already entwined within the fabric of our reality? This section serves as an unsettling exploration of how NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence manifests in the real world, dissecting patterns of manipulation and deception that subtly shape modern society. Be warned, the prevalence of these patterns and the extent of their influence may be more disturbing than you imagine. To understand the creeping chaos of NYARLATHOTEP's influence, we must first recognize that manipulation and deception are not modern inventions. Throughout history, these tactics have been employed in countless forms, from the blatant propaganda of wartime to the subtle machinations of cult leaders. Consider the posters of World War I, demonizing the enemy and stoking patriotic fervor, or the carefully crafted image of a political leader designed to appeal to the masses. These are but surface-level examples of a deeper, more insidious phenomenon. Understanding these historical precedents is crucial, for it allows us to recognize the recurring nature of these tactics and, in turn, to identify them in the present day. The concept of mass psychosis, or groupthink, also provides a critical framework for understanding how manipulation can take hold on a societal level, paving the way for the acceptance of false narratives and the erosion of critical thinking. But is this merely historical curiosity, or are the same techniques being refined and weaponized today? In the context of NYARLATHOTEP, chaos is not simply random disorder. It is a deliberately orchestrated force, a calculated dismantling of truth and order. This is influence wielded not through brute force, but through subtle suggestion, psychological manipulation, and the insidious planting of false narratives. Consider the techniques of gaslighting, where a victim is systematically undermined and made to question their own sanity, or projection, where one's own negative traits are attributed to another. These are the tools of the manipulator, the weapons used to erode trust, sow discord, and ultimately exert control. These tactics serve to disorient, confuse, and weaken individuals, making them more susceptible to suggestion and control. But what makes these techniques so effective, and how do they operate on a societal scale? One chilling example of orchestrated chaos can be found in the story of Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Jones, a charismatic and manipulative leader, used a combination of psychological techniques, including love bombing, sleep deprivation, and public humiliation, to exert absolute control over his followers. He created a cult of personality, demanding unwavering loyalty and portraying himself as the only source of truth and salvation. Through carefully orchestrated events and constant manipulation, Jones isolated his followers from the outside world, eroding their critical thinking and instilling in them a fear of dissent. This ultimately led to the tragic mass suicide at Jonestown in 1978, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked manipulation and the seductive power of charismatic leaders. But was Jones an anomaly, or simply one manifestation of a darker, more pervasive force? Political manipulation offers another fertile ground for NYARLATHOTEP's influence. Consider the Gulf of Tonkin incident, a series of alleged attacks on U.S. Navy ships in 1964 that were used to justify escalating the Vietnam War. Later investigations revealed that the incident was likely fabricated or exaggerated, but the damage was done. The American public, fueled by fear and misinformation, supported the war effort, leading to years of bloodshed and social upheaval. The incident serves as a potent example of how governments can use propaganda and deception to manipulate public opinion and justify their actions, even when those actions are based on false pretenses. More recently, the Cambridge Analytica scandal exposed the dark side of social media, revealing how personal data can be harvested and used to target individuals with tailored political messages, swaying their opinions and influencing election outcomes. This represents a new frontier in manipulation, where technology is used to exploit psychological vulnerabilities and undermine democratic processes. Are we truly free when our thoughts and beliefs are so easily influenced by unseen forces? The parallels between these real-world examples and Nyarlathotep's actions in Lovecraft's stories are unsettlingly clear. Like Nyarlathotep, Jones exploited the vulnerabilities of his followers, offering them a sense of belonging and purpose while subtly eroding their sanity. Like Nyarlathotep, political manipulators sow discord and confusion, creating a climate of fear and distrust. The algorithms that drive social media echo Nyarlathotep's manipulative nature, subtly shaping our perceptions and influencing our decisions without our conscious awareness. The key lies in understanding the underlying psychological mechanisms that make people susceptible to these forms of chaos. Cognitive biases, such as confirmation bias and the availability heuristic, lead us to selectively filter information and cling to beliefs that confirm our existing worldview. Emotional appeals, such as fear and patriotism, can override our rational thinking, making us more susceptible to manipulation. The desire for belonging, the need to feel accepted and valued by a group, can lead us to blindly follow authority figures and conform to group norms, even when those norms are harmful or irrational. Can we truly claim to be independent thinkers when our minds are so easily swayed by these subtle forces? However, the story doesn't end here. These patterns of manipulation and deception have roots that extend far back into history. What if these tactics are not merely isolated incidents, but rather manifestations of a deeper, more ancient pattern, one that has been unfolding for centuries? This leads us to the next disturbing question. If chaos is a tool, who are the ones wielding it, and what are their ultimate goals? It is important to acknowledge that not all forms of chaos are necessarily evil. Disruption and innovation often arise from challenging established norms and questioning conventional wisdom. Organic social movements, driven by genuine grassroots activism, can be a powerful force for positive change. The key difference lies in the intent and the methods employed. Manipulated movements often rely on deception, misinformation, and the exploitation of emotional vulnerabilities, while organic movements are characterized by transparency, critical thinking, and a commitment to truth. Distinguishing between the two requires a high degree of critical thinking, independent thought, and a willingness to challenge authority. Yet, in an age of information overload and algorithmic manipulation, this is becoming increasingly difficult. Despite these nuances, the underlying patterns of chaos remain unsettlingly consistent. The examples we have examined, from charismatic cult leaders to political manipulators and the insidious influence of technology, all share a common thread: the deliberate exploitation of human vulnerabilities to exert control and achieve specific agendas. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward resisting manipulation and maintaining intellectual autonomy. Understanding Nyarlathotep's archetype, not as a literal entity, but as a symbol of these chaotic forces, can help us to see the world more clearly, to question the narratives we are presented with, and to make more informed decisions. For as Lovecraft himself wrote, the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. The first step to resisting chaos, therefore, is recognizing its many faces. As we have seen, the tendrils of chaos extend far beyond isolated incidents of manipulation. What if these patterns are not merely the result of individual actors, but are instead symptomatic of a deeper corruption that permeates the highest echelons of power? This brings us to the unsettling notion of corrupted elites, embodied by the Black Pharaoh archetype, a symbol of hidden influence throughout history. Our objective now is to explore how this archetype embodies corruption and resonates through historical narratives, reflecting patterns of power, deceit, and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. For centuries, whispers have persisted, hinting at the unsettling notion that throughout history, elites have pursued forbidden knowledge and engaged in occult practices with profound consequences. To understand the occulted symbolism surrounding the Black Pharaoh, it is vital to understand how they are presented in conventional history. The Black Pharaohs, also known as the Nubian pharaohs of the 25th dynasty of ancient Egypt, are typically viewed through a lens of political and cultural significance. These rulers, hailing from the kingdom of Kush in present-day Sudan, conquered and unified Egypt in the 8th century BCE, ushering in a period of renewed stability and artistic flourishing. However, beyond this conventional understanding lies a darker, more esoteric interpretation. In occult circles, the Black Pharaoh is often seen as a symbol of forbidden knowledge, representing the allure of hidden power and the potential for corruption that comes with it. Certain occult groups have adopted this symbolism, viewing the Black Pharaoh as a figure who has transcended conventional morality in pursuit of arcane wisdom. This interpretation emphasizes the hidden, often unsettling, aspects of power and the temptations that can lead individuals down a path of moral decay. But how did this esoteric interpretation arise, and what historical forces shaped its evolution? The occult interpretation of the Black Pharaoh has evolved through various historical periods, intertwined with the lore of secret societies and esoteric practices. During the Renaissance, a renewed interest in Hermeticism and ancient Egyptian mysteries led some occultists to view the pharaohs as possessors of profound, hidden knowledge. This idea was further fueled by the rediscovery of ancient texts, such as the Corpus Hermeticum, which attributed mystical wisdom to the Egyptian god Thoth, often associated with the pharaohs. In the 19th and 20th centuries, figures like Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley incorporated Egyptian symbolism into their occult teachings, further solidifying the Black Pharaoh as a figure of esoteric significance. These interpretations often link the pharaohs to ancient mystery schools, secret initiations, and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, contributing to the archetype's association with power, corruption, and the dark side of human nature. But what exactly does this Black Pharaoh archetype represent, and how does it connect to NYARLATHOTEP's insidious influence? The Black Pharaoh archetype embodies the corrupting influence of power, the seductive allure of forbidden knowledge, and the potential for individuals to succumb to dark ambition. It represents the shadow side of leadership, the point at which the pursuit of personal gain eclipses the welfare of society. This archetype finds resonance in figures throughout history who have abused their authority, engaged in unethical practices, and prioritized their own desires over the common good. In the context of NYARLATHOTEP, the Black Pharaoh serves as a potent symbol of a manipulator of power, an agent of chaos who exploits the vulnerabilities of individuals and societies to achieve his own inscrutable ends. Like NYARLATHOTEP, the Black Pharaoh is characterized by deception, ambition, and a relentless pursuit of control, often employing manipulative tactics to maintain their grip on power. What is the symbolic significance of the blackness in this archetype, and what does it reveal about the hidden aspects of human nature? The symbolic significance of blackness in the Black Pharaoh archetype represents hidden knowledge, moral corruption, and the dark side of human nature. Black, in this context, is not merely a color. It is a symbol of that which is concealed, that which lies beneath the surface of conventional understanding. It represents the secrets and mysteries that are guarded by powerful elites, the knowledge that is deemed too dangerous or destabilizing for the masses to possess. Furthermore, blackness symbolizes the moral corruption that can accompany the pursuit of power, the willingness to compromise one's values and principles in the name of personal gain. It represents the shadow self, the darker aspects of human nature that are often suppressed or denied. The blackness of the Black Pharaoh archetype, therefore, serves as a reminder of the hidden dangers that lurk beneath the veneer of civilization, the potential for even the most seemingly benevolent leaders to succumb to the temptations of power and corruption. But can we find evidence of this archetype in real-world historical figures? Throughout history, numerous figures have embodied the traits of the Black Pharaoh archetype, exhibiting cruelty, corruption, and an insatiable thirst for power. Consider the Roman Emperor Caligula, known for his extravagant excesses, tyrannical rule, and rumored acts of depravity. His reign was marked by political instability, economic mismanagement, and a pervasive climate of fear. Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century Wallachian prince, gained notoriety for his brutal methods of warfare, including the impalement of thousands of his enemies. His reign was characterized by violence, terror, and a ruthless determination to maintain his authority. Certain members of the Borgia family, particularly during the Renaissance, became infamous for their political machinations, their alleged use of poison, and their ruthless pursuit of power. Their story is riddled with tales of corruption, intrigue, and a blatant disregard for morality. These figures, while differing in their specific circumstances, all share a common thread. They represent the corrupting influence of power and the potential for individuals to succumb to dark ambition. But were their actions purely driven by earthly desires, or were there darker forces at play? Are there hints that they engaged in occult practices? Indeed, many historical figures mirroring the Black Pharaoh archetype are rumored to have engaged in occult practices, further blurring the line between earthly ambition and darker, supernatural forces. While concrete evidence is often scarce, whispers and legends persist, suggesting that some of these individuals sought to augment their power through esoteric means. Caligula, for instance, was said to have been obsessed with Egyptian deities and mystery cults, potentially seeking to tap into ancient sources of power. The Borgia family, shrouded in secrecy and intrigue, was rumored to have dabbled in occult rituals and the black arts, seeking to manipulate events to their advantage. Vlad the Impaler's fierce resistance to the Ottoman Empire led to tales of him making pacts with dark forces to protect his homeland. These rumors, while often unsubstantiated, contribute to the mystique surrounding these figures, solidifying their place within the Black Pharaoh archetype. Beyond individual figures, what about the cults of personality that have formed around powerful leaders throughout history? Throughout history, cults of personality have frequently formed around powerful leaders, echoing NYARLATHOTEP's manipulative tactics. These leaders often employ a combination of charisma, propaganda, and psychological manipulation to cultivate unwavering loyalty and suppress dissent. Consider the quasi-religious fervor surrounding figures like Kim Il-sung in North Korea, where he was deified and presented as the infallible leader of the nation. Similarly, the messaging surrounding figures like Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union portrayed him as a wise and benevolent leader, despite his brutal purges and oppressive policies. These cults of personality often rely on emotional appeals, such as fear, nationalism, and the promise of a utopian future, to maintain their authority and control. Dissent is stifled through censorship, propaganda, and the suppression of alternative viewpoints, creating an environment where critical thinking is discouraged and blind obedience is rewarded. What are the long-term consequences of these personality cults? In modern society, political corruption and abuse of power continue to manifest in ways that mirror the Black Pharaoh archetype and NYARLATHOTEP's influence. Elites often exploit their positions for personal gain, manipulating public opinion and undermining democratic processes. The Panama Papers scandal, for instance, exposed a network of offshore accounts used by wealthy individuals and politicians to evade taxes and conceal their assets. The Cambridge Analytica scandal revealed how personal data can be harvested and used to target individuals with tailored political messages, swaying their opinions and influencing election outcomes. These examples demonstrate how power can be used to manipulate and control, undermining trust and eroding the foundations of society. Such instances, unfortunately, are not anomalies, but rather symptoms of a deeper systemic problem, the unchecked concentration of power in the hands of a few. Are we witnessing a modern-day manifestation of the Black Pharaoh archetype, with elites manipulating society for their own benefit? These historical figures and events serve as chilling reflections of NYARLATHOTEP's influence, embodying chaos and corruption. Like NYARLATHOTEP, These figures exploit the vulnerabilities of others, using deception, manipulation, and fear to maintain their authority and achieve their goals. Caligula's tyranny, Vlad's brutality, and the Borgia's intrigues all demonstrate the destructive potential of unchecked power, while the cults of personality surrounding figures like Kim Il-sung and Joseph Stalin reveal the insidious nature of manipulation and control. The political corruption and abuse of power in modern society further underscore the enduring relevance of the Black Pharaoh archetype, highlighting the ways in which elites continue to exploit their positions for personal gain and manipulate public opinion. But what psychological and social factors contribute to the rise of such corrupted elites, and what are the consequences for society as a whole? The rise of corrupted elites is fueled by a complex interplay of psychological and social factors, including narcissism, a thirst for power, and a lack of empathy. Narcissistic individuals are often driven by a need for admiration and a sense of entitlement, making them more likely to abuse their authority and exploit others. A thirst for power can override ethical considerations, leading individuals to engage in unethical or illegal practices in order to maintain their grip on control. A lack of empathy can make it easier for elites to disregard the suffering of others, justifying their actions in the name of personal gain. The consequences of unchecked power and corruption on societies are devastating, leading to the erosion of trust, the breakdown of social order, and the rise of tyranny. When elites prioritize their own interests over the common good, they undermine the foundations of democracy and create a climate of fear and distrust. How can we prevent this from happening, and how can we hold those in power accountable for their actions? However, it is important to acknowledge that not all rulers are inherently corrupt, and that power can be used for good. Throughout history, there have been leaders who have used their authority to promote justice, equality, and the well-being of their people. Figures like Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, and Mahatma Gandhi, for instance, represent the positive potential of leadership, demonstrating how power can be used to inspire, uplift, and transform societies. The complexities of leadership and the challenges of maintaining ethical standards in positions of authority must be recognized. Even well-intentioned leaders can make mistakes or be influenced by corrupting forces, and it is important to create systems of checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. Furthermore, is deception ever justified in the pursuit of a greater good? Understanding the Black Pharaoh archetype allows us to recognize the patterns and impact of corrupted power. By studying historical patterns and archetypes, we can become more aware of the forces that seek to manipulate and control us. The shadow of the Black Pharaoh reminds us that power unchecked can lead to chaos unleashed. But how does the pursuit of technological advancement mirror the ambitions and dangers of the Black Pharaoh, potentially unleashing unforeseen chaos? We will explore this next. Just as the Black Pharaoh's ambition could lead to the corruption of entire civilizations, the relentless pursuit of technological advancement can unleash forces beyond our control. But what if technology, in its ubiquity and power, is simply another mask worn by NYARLATHOTEP, a modern guise for the crawling chaos? This section will delve into how technology acts as a modern conduit for chaos, amplifying its reach across the globe. We will investigate how our darkest ambitions are mirrored and magnified by technological advancements, leading to unforeseen and destructive consequences. Be prepared to question the very nature of progress and the price we pay for it. Historically, technological advancements have often been heralded as harbingers of progress, promising to solve humanity's problems and usher in a new era of prosperity. The printing press, for example, democratized knowledge and facilitated the spread of ideas, yet it also fueled religious conflict and political upheaval. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented economic growth and improved living standards, but at the cost of environmental degradation and social inequality. Nuclear technology offered the promise of limitless energy, yet it also unleashed the specter of global annihilation. Each of these advancements, driven by human ambition and a desire for progress, ultimately led to unforeseen social, environmental, and ethical problems. The rapid pace of technological change often outstrips our ability to fully understand and control its impact, leaving us vulnerable to unintended consequences. What if this inherent risk is not a bug, but a feature, a pathway for chaos to seep into the world? Technological chaos can be defined as the unintended or deliberate use of technology to create confusion, division, and instability within societies. It is the exploitation of our reliance on technology to distort reality, manipulate emotions, and control behavior on a mass scale. As we discussed earlier, concepts such as mass psychosis and groupthink can be amplified through technology, creating echo chambers and reinforcing existing biases. Technology itself is not inherently evil. It is a tool that can be used for both good and evil purposes. The real danger lies in the hands of those who control and wield it, those who seek to exploit its power for their own inscrutable ends. But how exactly does this chaos manifest in our modern world? Consider the role of social media in spreading misinformation. Echo chambers amplify existing biases and polarize societies. Algorithms curate content based on user preferences, creating filter bubbles that limit exposure to diverse perspectives. This leads to the reinforcement of extreme views and the erosion of common ground. Artificial intelligence, with its potential for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons systems, raises profound ethical concerns. The ability to track and monitor individuals on a massive scale could lead to the suppression of dissent and the erosion of privacy, while autonomous weapons systems could unleash a new era of warfare, devoid of human control and moral restraint. But here's what most people miss. Algorithms are designed to manipulate search results, censor information, and influence online behavior. The lack of transparency and accountability in these systems allows for subtle yet powerful forms of control, shaping our perceptions of reality and limiting our ability to make informed decisions. Are we sleepwalking into a digital dystopia, where our thoughts and actions are subtly guided by unseen forces? These technological examples can be directly connected to NYARLATHOTEP's core attributes: manipulation, deception, and the sowing of discord. Just as NYARLATHOTEP manipulates individuals through their desires and fears, technology is being used to exploit our vulnerabilities, preying on our desire for convenience, our fear of missing out, and our tendency to trust technology without question. The spread of misinformation mirrors NYARLATHOTEP's talent for deception, distorting reality and creating confusion. The polarization of societies through social media echoes NYARLATHOTEP's ability to sow discord, dividing us against each other and undermining social cohesion. The potential for AI to be used for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons systems represents a terrifying escalation of control, a nightmare vision of a world where our every move is watched and our very thoughts are monitored. But the implications don't end there. The relentless drive for technological innovation mirrors the pursuit of forbidden knowledge in Lovecraft's stories, highlighting the dangers of pushing the boundaries of science without ethical considerations. What is the long-term consequences of these unchecked technological advancements on societies, and how can we guard against them? Unchecked technological advancement could lead to the erosion of privacy, the loss of autonomy, and the rise of totalitarianism. As technology becomes more deeply integrated into our lives, it becomes increasingly difficult to resist its influence. Our personal data is constantly being collected and analyzed, creating a detailed profile of our habits, preferences, and beliefs. This information can then be used to manipulate our behavior, nudging us towards certain choices and away from others. The rise of surveillance technologies, such as facial recognition and predictive policing, could lead to a world where our every move is tracked and our freedom is severely limited. But we're just scratching the surface. What we'll discover next is even more shocking. Virtual reality and augmented reality blur the lines between reality and illusion, creating a world where it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. However, it is important to acknowledge the positive aspects of technology. Technology has the potential to improve lives, solve problems, and connect people around the world. Responsible innovation, ethical development, and regulation are crucial to mitigate the risks associated with technological advancements. Digital literacy, critical thinking, and media awareness can empower individuals to resist manipulation and make informed decisions in the digital age. But even with these safeguards, can we truly control the forces we have unleashed? Despite these counterarguments, understanding how technology can be used to amplify chaos is essential for safeguarding our freedoms and preserving our sanity. By studying both the benefits and the risks of technology, we can make more informed choices about its use and development. We must remain vigilant, questioning the narratives presented to us and demanding transparency and accountability from those who control these powerful tools. What they don't want you to know is that the ghost in the machine may be more than just code. It could be chaos incarnate, a modern mask for NYARLATHOTEP, whispering temptations and sowing discord in the digital age. Can we resist NYARLATHOTEP's influence in this new technological landscape? Or are we doomed to an existence of chaos, manipulated and controlled by forces we can barely comprehend? Building on our exploration of technology as a conduit for chaos, we now turn to an even more unsettling question. What if technology is capable of eroding our perception of reality itself, blurring the lines between the real and the unreal? Could our reliance on technology be manipulated to the point where we can no longer discern truth from deception, ultimately making us puppets of a hidden chaotic force? This section will delve into the unsettling idea that advanced technologies could be used to create a false reality, questioning the very nature of our perceived world. To fully grasp the gravity of this concept, let's briefly consider philosophical and fictional precursors that have long questioned the nature of reality. In ancient Greece, Plato's allegory of the cave presented a scenario where prisoners mistake shadows for reality, unaware of the true world beyond. Centuries later, René Descartes, in his evil demon thought experiment, questioned whether an all-powerful deceiver could be manipulating his perceptions. This theme of simulated reality has also been a staple of science fiction, from Philip K. Dick's novels, where characters struggle to determine what is real, to the blockbuster film The Matrix, which depicted humanity unknowingly living in a computer-generated simulation. These once abstract ideas have now evolved into potential technological realities, raising profound questions about the nature of existence itself. But what exactly does it mean for technology to erode reality? Eroding reality can be defined as the insidious process by which technology diminishes our ability to distinguish between the genuine and the artificial, blurring the lines between the physical and the virtual. Consider simulation theory, the idea that our perceived reality is a computer-generated simulation controlled by a higher power. This theory, once confined to philosophical debates and science fiction, has gained traction in the scientific community, with some researchers exploring the possibility that our universe is, in fact, a highly advanced simulation. However, it is crucial to clarify the difference between harmless entertainment and technology that actively distorts or manipulates our perception of reality. While enjoying a fictional movie is one thing, being unable to discern truth from falsehood is an entirely different and far more dangerous prospect. Consider the proliferation of deepfakes and AI-generated content. These technologies can create realistic but entirely fabricated videos and audio recordings, making it increasingly difficult to discern what is real and what is not. This has already been used to spread misinformation and manipulate public opinion, as evidenced by numerous instances of fabricated news stories and political smear campaigns. Augmented reality, AR, and mixed reality, MR, offer even more immersive ways to blur the lines between the physical world and digital overlays. Imagine a future where AR overlays are so pervasive that they create a constant state of mediated reality, altering our perceptions of the world around us. But here's what most people miss. Brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, represent the most direct and potentially dangerous form of reality erosion. These technologies, which allow direct communication between the brain and external devices, have the potential to directly manipulate our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, giving external actors unprecedented influence over our minds. Consider the ethical implications if this technology were used nefariously. These examples of technology eroding reality can be directly connected back to NYARLATHOTEP, showing how they could serve his purposes of sowing chaos, manipulating humanity, and dissolving our understanding of order. Just as NYARLATHOTEP uses masks to deceive and manipulate, these technologies create layers of artificiality that obscure the truth. What are the psychological consequences of living in a world where it is increasingly difficult to distinguish truth from falsehood? The rise of anxiety, paranoia, and a loss of trust in institutions and other people are the results. But the implications don't stop there. These technologies could be used for social control, mass surveillance, and the suppression of dissent, furthering the chaotic nature of the modern world. Are we sleepwalking into a world where our thoughts are no longer our own? The philosophical implications of a simulated reality are even more profound, questioning the very meaning of existence, free will, and the nature of consciousness. If our reality is a simulation, are our choices truly our own, or are they predetermined by the programmers? Do we even have souls, or are we simply complex algorithms running on a cosmic computer? This is only the tip of the iceberg. Virtual reality and augmented reality blur the lines between reality and illusion, creating a world where it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. However, it is important to acknowledge that these technologies also offer tremendous potential benefits. Enhanced communication, improved education, and new forms of artistic expression are just a few of the possibilities. Responsible innovation, ethical development, and regulation are crucial to mitigate the risks associated with these technological advancements. Digital literacy, critical thinking, and media awareness can empower individuals to resist manipulation and make informed decisions in the digital age. But can we truly control forces that we've already unleashed? Despite these counterarguments, the erosion of reality is a real and growing threat that must be taken seriously. By understanding the potential dangers of technology, we can take steps to protect our minds, our societies, and our sense of reality itself. In a world of manufactured realities, the greatest act of rebellion may be to insist on the truth. But this leads us to the question of intent. Is this erosion of reality accidental, a mere byproduct of technological progress, or is there a deliberate force at play, a chaotic puppeteer pulling the strings from behind the scenes? This question will be at the center of our investigation in the next section. As reality continues to blur, manipulated by forces unseen, how can we preserve our sanity and autonomy in a world increasingly dominated by chaos? This section serves as a guide, offering practical strategies to recognize and resist NYARLATHOTEP's insidious influence, providing tools to protect your mind and reclaim your sense of reality. Resistance, in this context, is not merely a political act. It is a profound personal and collective endeavor to safeguard the very essence of what makes us human. Throughout history, individuals and groups have stood against manipulation and oppression, offering invaluable lessons in resilience and critical thinking. Consider Martin Luther King Jr., whose unwavering commitment to nonviolent resistance challenged the deeply entrenched structures of racial segregation in the United States. His ability to inspire millions, coupled with his steadfast refusal to succumb to hatred or violence, demonstrates the power of moral fortitude in the face of overwhelming adversity. Similarly, Nelson Mandela's decades-long struggle against apartheid in South Africa stands as a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit and the importance of unwavering commitment to justice. But let's not forget the countless whistleblowers who have risked their careers and reputations to expose corruption, the dissidents who have challenged authoritarian regimes at the cost of their freedom, and the activists who have fought tirelessly for social justice, often facing violence and intimidation. These historical struggles, though seemingly removed from the cosmic horror of NYARLATHOTEP, offer crucial parallels to the challenges we face today, highlighting the enduring relevance of courage, resilience, and critical thought in combating subtler forms of manipulation. How can we apply these lessons to the modern world, where manipulation often takes the form of misinformation, propaganda, and technological control? To effectively resist NYARLATHOTEP's influence, we must first understand the core concepts that underpin our ability to maintain our autonomy. Cognitive sovereignty can be defined as the ability to control one's own thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions, preventing external forces from dictating our internal reality. It is the right to think for oneself, to question authority, and to arrive at one's own conclusions, free from coercion or manipulation. Closely related is mental fortitude, the capacity to withstand psychological pressure, maintain emotional stability, and resist the allure of easy answers and simplistic ideologies. It is the strength to confront uncomfortable truths, to embrace complexity, and to persevere in the face of doubt and uncertainty. But these concepts are not innate. They must be cultivated through conscious effort and diligent practice. This is where critical thinking, media literacy, and emotional intelligence come into play, serving as essential tools for navigating a world saturated with misinformation, propaganda, and manipulative rhetoric. For example, critical thinking skills can be used to dissect news articles, social media posts, and political speeches, identifying logical fallacies, biases, and deceptive rhetoric. Consider a news article that relies heavily on emotional appeals and anecdotal evidence while lacking verifiable facts and data. By questioning the source, examining the evidence, and identifying any logical fallacies, such as appeals to emotion or ad hominem attacks, one can determine the reliability and validity of the information presented. Similarly, media literacy can help individuals distinguish between credible sources and unreliable ones, recognizing the techniques used in propaganda and disinformation campaigns. Take, for instance, the numerous instances of debunked claims surrounding vaccines. By examining the scientific consensus, scrutinizing the sources promoting these claims, and understanding the techniques used to spread misinformation, individuals can protect themselves from falling prey to false narratives. Emotional intelligence, too, is crucial, enabling individuals to recognize and manage their own emotions, resist emotional manipulation, and empathize with others without being controlled by their feelings. Imagine a situation where someone attempts to manipulate you by playing on your fears or insecurities. By recognizing the emotional manipulation tactics, regulating your emotional response, and responding with empathy and assertiveness, you can neutralize their influence and maintain control of the interaction. But are we truly capable of recognizing these tactics when they are deployed subtly, masked by charm, charisma, or even seemingly good intentions? Connecting these resistance strategies back to NYARLATHOTEP, we can see how they directly counteract his manipulative tactics, which aim to sow discord, erode reality, and ultimately control humanity. Just as NYARLATHOTEP uses deception and disguise to achieve his goals, these strategies empower us to see through the masks, recognize the underlying chaos, and maintain our autonomy. What then are the psychological and social factors that enable resistance? Self-awareness, empathy, a commitment to truth, and a willingness to challenge authority are all essential. Building strong communities based on trust, mutual support, and shared values is also crucial, serving as a bulwark against the forces of chaos and manipulation. But let's not forget the ethical implications of resistance. Non-violence, respect for others, and a commitment to justice must guide our actions, ensuring that our resistance does not become a source of further chaos and oppression. However, this is not the whole story. Resisting powerful and subtle forms of manipulation is incredibly challenging. Discerning truth from falsehood can be difficult, and maintaining one's independence of thought and action requires constant vigilance. There is also the risk of falling into paranoia or conspiratorial thinking, where skepticism spirals into irrationality and distrust. It's important to balance skepticism with reason and evidence, avoiding the trap of believing everything that challenges the mainstream narrative. Furthermore, individual action has its limitations. Systemic change is needed to address the root causes of manipulation and oppression, balancing individual responsibility with a critique of societal structures. What about the argument that ignorance is bliss? Is there a point where constantly questioning everything becomes detrimental, leading to anxiety, cynicism, and a loss of faith in humanity? Despite these counterarguments, resisting Nyarlathotep's influence remains an ongoing process that demands vigilance, self-awareness, and a commitment to critical thinking. By cultivating our cognitive sovereignty, mental fortitude, and ethical compass, we can protect ourselves from manipulation, preserve our sense of reality, and contribute to a more just and equitable world. The crawling chaos thrives in darkness and confusion, but even the smallest spark of truth can pierce the shadows and illuminate the path toward freedom. But what if the very tools we use to resist manipulation are themselves susceptible to corruption? What if our critical thinking skills can be twisted, our media literacy exploited, and our emotional intelligence manipulated to serve the purposes of chaos? This unsettling possibility will be explored in the next section, as we delve deeper into the dark heart of Nyarlathotep's influence. As we arm ourselves with cognitive sovereignty and mental fortitude, standing against the subtle manipulations that seek to erode our reality, it is crucial to recognize the arena where these forces now wield their greatest influence: technology. More than just a tool, technology, in its current form, often acts as a haunted amplifier of humanity's worst tendencies and a playground for those who seek to control the narrative. This brings us to the crucial question of how the relentless pursuit of technological advancement can lead to unforeseen and often catastrophic consequences, mirroring the Lovecraftian themes of loss of control, existential threat, and the subtle erosion of sanity that Nyarlathotep embodies. Historically, technological advancements have been celebrated as triumphs of human ingenuity, promising to usher in eras of unprecedented progress and prosperity. But when we look deeper into the shadows, we see a far more sinister underbelly to these supposed advancements. Consider lead gasoline, once hailed as a miracle additive that boosted engine performance, only to be revealed as a silent killer, poisoning entire populations and causing neurological damage on a massive scale. Or take thalidomide, a drug marketed as a safe and effective treatment for morning sickness, which tragically led to devastating birth defects in thousands of children worldwide. Even DDT, initially lauded as a revolutionary insecticide, eventually proved to be an ecological nightmare, decimating wildlife populations and contaminating entire ecosystems. These advancements, driven by a desire for progress and profit, lacked sufficient ethical oversight or consideration of long-term consequences, revealing a disturbing pattern of unintended destruction. Were these simply errors in judgment, or do they hint at a more profound truth about the nature of technology itself? To truly understand the insidious nature of this phenomenon, we must define what we mean by haunted technology. Haunted technology is any technology that, either by design or unintended consequence, introduces chaos, instability, or harm into the world, often disproportionate to its intended benefits. It is not merely about technological failures or glitches. It is about the subtle and pervasive ways in which technology can warp our perceptions, manipulate our behaviors, and erode the foundations of our societies. This haunting can manifest in countless forms, from environmental devastation and social disruption to psychological manipulation and the creation of new forms of inequality. Consider social media algorithms designed to maximize engagement and generate profit, inadvertently spreading misinformation, amplifying extremist views, and polarizing societies to an unprecedented degree. Or take automation, which, while increasing efficiency and productivity, also leads to job displacement and economic insecurity for vast segments of the population. But what makes this haunting so insidious is that it is not always immediately apparent. It often unfolds gradually over time, making it difficult to recognize and address before it is too late. For example, the role of social media algorithms in amplifying misinformation and creating echo chambers is becoming increasingly clear, with studies showing that false news spreads faster and wider than factual information. Consider the 2016 US presidential election, where Russian bots and trolls used social media platforms to spread false narratives, manipulate public opinion, and sow discord among the American electorate. According to reports, these actors created fake accounts, spread conspiracy theories, and amplified divisive content, reaching millions of users and influencing the outcome of the election. Or consider the potential for artificial intelligence to be used for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons systems. China's social credit system, for instance, uses AI to monitor and control citizens' behavior, rewarding obedience and punishing dissent. The system collects data from various sources, including social media activity, online purchases, and surveillance cameras, assigning each citizen a score that determines their access to jobs, housing, and travel. Furthermore, the use of targeted advertising and personalized content has allowed manipulation of consumer behavior and political opinions. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, for example, revealed how data harvested from millions of Facebook users was used to create personalized political ads, influencing voters in the 2016 US election and the Brexit referendum. The lack of transparency and accountability in these systems raises serious ethical concerns about the potential for abuse and manipulation. This suggests that these seemingly disparate technological advancements are not merely isolated incidents, but rather manifestations of a deeper, more insidious force at work. These examples are echoes of NYARLATHOTEP sowing discord and confusion, using technology as a tool to manipulate and control humanity. Just as NYARLATHOTEP exploits human weaknesses and desires to achieve his goals, so too do these technological systems exploit our psychological vulnerabilities, such as the desire for validation, the fear of missing out, and the tendency to trust technology without question. The psychological and social factors that make people susceptible to these forms of technological manipulation are complex and multifaceted. The constant bombardment of information, the pressure to stay connected, and the illusion of control created by technology can all contribute to a sense of overwhelm and disempowerment. This, in turn, can make people more vulnerable to manipulation, as they seek easy answers and simple solutions to complex problems. But what are the long-term consequences of this unchecked technological advancement on our societies? Are we sleepwalking into a dystopian future where privacy is a distant memory, autonomy is an illusion, and new forms of totalitarianism reign supreme? However, this is not the whole story. This dark reflection raises the question: is humanity doomed to be consumed by the chaos of haunted technology, or can we find a way to harness its power for good while mitigating its risks? The path forward requires a nuanced approach that acknowledges both the benefits and the dangers of technology. It demands a commitment to responsible innovation, ethical development, and effective regulation, ensuring that technological advancements serve humanity rather than enslaving it. It is important to acknowledge the positive aspects of technology and its potential to improve lives, solve problems, and connect people around the world. Technology has enabled advancements in medicine, communication, and education, leading to increased life expectancy, greater access to information, and new opportunities for learning and growth. Organizations like the IEEE are working to develop ethical guidelines for AI, promoting transparency, accountability, and human oversight in the development and deployment of these powerful technologies. Digital literacy, critical thinking, and media awareness are essential to empower individuals to resist manipulation and make informed decisions in the digital age. Educational initiatives aimed at teaching students how to identify misinformation, evaluate online sources, and protect their privacy are crucial for building a more resilient and informed citizenry. However, some may argue that blaming technology is an easy scapegoat, deflecting attention from the deeper societal issues that drive its misuse. It's easy to blame social media for polarization, but isn't it more accurate to say that social media merely amplifies existing societal divisions? Ultimately, the problem is with human intent and societal structures, not the technology itself. Despite these counterarguments, the potential for chaos and manipulation through technology cannot be ignored, and constant vigilance is required. By studying both the benefits and the risks of technology, we can make more informed choices about its use and development, moving towards a more humanistic approach to technological integration. The glowing screen can be a window to enlightenment or a mirror reflecting our darkest selves. The choice, ultimately, is ours, and our choices will define the fate of society. But what if the greatest trick NYARLATHOTEP ever played was convincing us that technology was the problem, rather than our own corrupted ambitions and unchecked desires? Building upon the realization that technology is eroding reality itself, we now delve into an even more unsettling dimension: how technology's pervasive influence on identity provides fertile ground for NYARLATHOTEP's subtle chaos to take root. The digital world, initially conceived as a realm of liberation and boundless self-expression, has, perhaps inadvertently, become a subtle prison, a hall of mirrors reflecting distorted versions of ourselves, potentially dissolving the very essence of our true selves. This brings us to the crucial exploration of technology's profound impact on the individual, hinting at how this compromised identity can be exploited in ways previously unimaginable. Historically, identity was forged in the crucible of community, family, and tangible, real-world experiences. Before the advent of mass media and the digital age, one's sense of self was largely shaped by local culture, family traditions, and the practical skills passed down through generations. A blacksmith's son, for instance, would learn the trade from his father, inheriting not only a profession but also a sense of purpose and belonging within his community. A farmer's daughter would learn the rhythms of the land, her identity intertwined with the cycles of nature and the shared labor of her family. These identities, rooted in tangible realities, provided a stable and coherent sense of self. Contrast this with the carefully constructed online personas that dominate today's digital landscape. With the rise of the internet and social media, platforms emerged that allowed for the meticulous construction of carefully curated online personas, often meticulously detached from the messy realities of everyday life. Where early internet forums offered a relatively anonymous space for experimentation with identity, they lacked the visual and social pressures that define today's social media. Individuals could explore different interests and connect with like-minded people, but their online identities were largely separate from their offline lives. However, the progression of online interactions didn't stop there. Soon, immersive virtual worlds like Second Life and early MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, emerged, offering individuals the opportunity to craft and inhabit completely different identities, untethered from the constraints of their physical selves. Avatars could be designed to embody idealized versions of oneself, or even to explore entirely different genders, races, and personalities. To understand the true scope of this phenomenon, we must first define digital identity. Digital identity is the online representation of oneself, encompassing a tapestry of profiles, interactions, and shared content across various digital platforms. Consider, for instance, how a Facebook profile, with its carefully selected photos and status updates, contributes to a curated digital identity, presenting a specific image to the world. Or think of a Twitter feed, where concise pronouncements and carefully chosen follows shape a perception of one's interests and affiliations. Even a gaming avatar, with its unique appearance, skills, and online interactions, contributes to a digital identity that may bear little resemblance to the player's real-world self. But what happens when these carefully constructed digital identities begin to overshadow and even supplant one's sense of self? This brings us to the concept of virtual escapism. Virtual escapism is the tendency to seek refuge in online worlds as a means of evading real-life problems or anxieties, ultimately detaching from responsibility and reality. Consider the documented cases of individuals neglecting their personal hygiene, social relationships, and professional responsibilities due to online gaming addiction. These individuals find solace and validation in the virtual world, where they can achieve a sense of mastery and control that may be lacking in their real lives. The lines between reality and fantasy become blurred, leading to a diminished sense of self and a detachment from the consequences of their actions. This detachment is further exacerbated by the online disinhibition effect. Online disinhibition effect is the phenomenon where people behave differently online, often expressing themselves more aggressively or openly than they would in face-to-face interactions, largely due to the perceived anonymity and lack of immediate social consequences. Explain how anonymity in online forums can lead to increased incivility, the proliferation of hate speech, and the spread of misinformation, all contributing to a toxic online environment. In this context, individuals may feel emboldened to express views and engage in behaviors that they would normally suppress in real life, leading to a further erosion of personal responsibility and a detachment from the consequences of their actions. But what are the long-term effects when personal restraint disappears? Consider the phenomenon of social media influencers and their meticulously crafted online personas. These individuals, often celebrated for their seemingly perfect lives, create idealized versions of themselves that are often unattainable for their followers. They carefully curate their images, showcasing flawless appearances, exotic travels, and seemingly effortless success, all while strategically obscuring the realities of their struggles and insecurities. The constant exposure to these unattainable ideals can contribute to feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and depression in their followers, fostering a sense of self-doubt and a desire to emulate these unrealistic personas. Furthermore, the rise of online echo chambers and filter bubbles reinforces this phenomenon. Online echo chambers and filter bubbles amplify existing biases and reinforce pre-existing beliefs, leading to increased polarization and a decline in critical thinking. Imagine a case study of how specific algorithms promote certain political viewpoints on social media, reinforcing existing biases and limiting exposure to alternative perspectives. Individuals become trapped in a cycle of confirmation bias, where they are only exposed to information that validates their pre-existing beliefs, making them less likely to engage with opposing viewpoints or challenge their own assumptions. This echo chamber effect can lead to increased polarization and a decline in civic engagement. But it doesn't stop there. The addictive nature of online gaming has the potential to consume individuals' lives, leading to social isolation, neglect of real-world responsibilities, and a blurring of the lines between reality and fantasy. Consider the documented cases of individuals neglecting personal hygiene, abandoning social relationships, and even foregoing basic necessities due to excessive gaming. These individuals become trapped in a virtual world where they can escape from the challenges and disappointments of their real lives, seeking refuge in a realm of instant gratification and endless possibilities. This blurring of the lines between reality and fantasy can have devastating consequences. And finally, consider the darker side of online interaction. Online grooming and identity theft illustrate how malicious actors exploit vulnerable individuals by creating false identities and manipulating them for personal gain. Consider an analysis of the techniques used by online predators, who often create elaborate backstories and cultivate relationships with their victims over extended periods of time, gaining their trust and manipulating them into compromising situations. These predators exploit the anonymity of the internet to conceal their true identities and engage in deceptive practices. The psychological manipulation involved in these cases can have devastating consequences for the victims. These examples, seemingly disparate, share a common thread: the erosion of self and the disconnection from reality, creating fertile ground for NYARLATHOTEP's manipulative chaos to flourish. Fragmented online identities are easier to manipulate with targeted propaganda and carefully crafted narratives. A cohesive sense of self becomes compromised when individuals are bombarded with conflicting messages and subjected to constant social comparison. The manipulation of social norms allows for the exploitation of psychological vulnerabilities, such as the desire for validation, the fear of missing out, and the tendency to conform to social expectations. A population detached from reality is also easily controlled. What are the long-term consequences of this identity erosion on society? The decline of civic engagement, the rise of extremism, and the erosion of trust in institutions and other people are all potential outcomes. These consequences align perfectly with NYARLATHOTEP's agenda of discord and chaos. The constant pursuit of validation through likes and followers makes individuals more susceptible to manipulation, as they seek external affirmation to fill the void left by a weakened sense of self. How can societies stand up against manipulation with technology if their citizens' understanding of reality is being shaped by it? However, this is not the complete picture, as it is important to acknowledge the positive aspects of online communities and the ability to express oneself authentically online, emphasizing the potential for connection and self-discovery. Online support groups provide a safe space for individuals to connect with others who share their experiences, offering a sense of belonging and mutual understanding. Creative communities foster collaboration and innovation, allowing artists, writers, and musicians to share their work and receive feedback from a global audience. Educational resources provide access to knowledge and learning opportunities for individuals who may not have access to traditional educational institutions. It's also important to discuss the importance of using technology mindfully and intentionally, setting boundaries and prioritizing real-world connections. Despite these counterarguments, the erosion of identity through technology amplifies chaos, creating a world where individuals are more susceptible to manipulation and control. Technology isn't inherently bad, but it is being used to create chaos and manipulate individuals, furthering the cause of NYARLATHOTEP. The greatest trick the digital world ever pulled was convincing us we were still ourselves. But what happens when technology alters our collective identity, bending society itself to the will of the crawling chaos? Building on the insidious erosion of individual identity we've explored, a far more reaching consequence looms: the disintegration of societal structures themselves. If the fracturing of individual identity provides fertile ground for chaos, the resulting societal erosion is the harvest. This is the next stage in NYARLATHOTEP's grand design, a slow, insidious dismantling of shared values, trust, and collective purpose, facilitated and accelerated by the very technologies meant to unite us. Historically, shifts in technology and communication have often preceded periods of significant societal upheaval and even collapse. Consider the advent of the printing press in the 15th century. While it democratized knowledge and fueled the Renaissance, it also shattered the Catholic Church's monopoly on information, leading to the Reformation and centuries of religious conflict that fractured Europe. Or consider the rise of radio in the 20th century, initially hailed as a tool for education and entertainment, but quickly weaponized by totalitarian regimes like Nazi Germany to spread propaganda, incite hatred, and manipulate entire populations, ultimately leading to World War II. These technological disruptions led to a questioning of established authority and the rise of new ideologies that challenged traditional norms, creating a societal identity crisis. Such events create a societal identity crisis where collective understanding is fractured and people withdraw into echo chambers, primed for manipulation. In a modern parallel, the Arab Spring uprisings of the early 2010s demonstrated social media's power to mobilize protests and challenge autocratic regimes. However, these movements also devolved into sectarian violence and civil wars, fueled by disinformation and extremist rhetoric spread through the same social media platforms. Is this merely a coincidence, or are we witnessing a recurring pattern, amplified by the speed and scale of modern technology? Societal erosion can be defined as the process by which a society loses its cohesion, shared values, and ability to function effectively due to technology. This includes the loss of trust in institutions, where citizens increasingly distrust governments, media outlets, and other established authorities, fueled by conspiracy theories and misinformation spread online. There's also increased polarization, where political and social divides deepen as individuals retreat into echo chambers and demonize those with opposing viewpoints. Finally, a decline in civil discourse occurs as reasoned debate gives way to personal attacks, hate speech, and the silencing of dissenting voices. Technology accelerates this process by creating echo chambers, spreading misinformation, and amplifying divisive rhetoric, weakening the bonds that hold society together. This erosion isn't just differing opinions, but a fundamental breakdown in the ability to communicate, compromise, and find common ground, creating an atmosphere of mistrust and animosity. Social media algorithms, for instance, contribute to political polarization by creating filter bubbles and reinforcing existing biases. Studies have shown how platforms like Facebook and Twitter prioritize content that aligns with users' pre-existing beliefs, creating echo chambers where individuals are only exposed to information that confirms their viewpoints. This can lead to a distorted perception of reality, where people overestimate the popularity of their own beliefs and underestimate the validity of opposing viewpoints. Imagine a political candidate who only sees positive feedback and support online, leading them to believe they have a mandate that doesn't exist in the broader population. This creates a society that is difficult to unite. The spread of misinformation and disinformation through online platforms further undermines trust in institutions, manipulates public opinion, and incites violence. Analyze the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, which falsely accused prominent Democrats of running a child sex trafficking ring out of a pizza restaurant. This fabricated narrative, spread through social media and fringe websites, led to real-world consequences, including an armed man firing shots inside the restaurant. This shows how easily false narratives spread and the real-world consequences that come with it. The decline in civility and reasoned discourse in online spaces leads to cyberbullying, hate speech, and the use of personal attacks to silence dissenting voices. Consider the countless examples of individuals being harassed and threatened online for expressing their opinions, particularly on controversial topics. The anonymity afforded by the internet emboldens individuals to engage in behaviors they would normally suppress in face-to-face interactions, creating a toxic online environment where reasoned debate is replaced by personal attacks and intimidation. This creates psychological damage for victims and hurts society as a whole. The erosion of local communities and the rise of online social networks contributes to a sense of isolation and detachment from the physical world. While online networks offer benefits, they undermine the bonds of community and shared identity. Examine the decline in participation in local clubs, community organizations, and religious institutions, as people increasingly spend their time engaging in online-only interactions. This detachment from the physical world can lead to a sense of alienation, loneliness, and a weakened sense of civic responsibility. Distrust in science from social media also impacts climate change action, vaccinations, and other areas of science. Countless individuals share false information about climate change, questioning the validity of scientific data. This disinformation leads to inaction, as many people become convinced climate change is not a real threat. Similar disinformation has been spread about vaccinations, leading to reduced vaccination rates and subsequent outbreaks of preventable diseases. But here's what most people miss. These examples are manifestations of NYARLATHOTEP's desire to sow chaos and undermine the foundations of order and stability, advancing his agenda and those of the outer gods. They exploit vulnerabilities, such as the desire for instant gratification, the fear of complexity, and the tendency to prioritize individual desires over the common good. Long-term, this societal erosion could lead to the rise of extremism, the breakdown of democratic institutions, and the potential for social unrest and violence, all echoing Lovecraft's themes of cosmic indifference, the insignificance of humanity, and the inevitability of chaos. However, it's important to acknowledge the positive aspects of technology, such as its ability to connect people, facilitate communication, and promote social change. Technology has been used to organize social movements, provide disaster relief, and foster global collaboration. Responsible technological development, ethical guidelines, and thoughtful regulation can also help to mitigate the risks of societal erosion. Critical thinking, media literacy, and civic engagement are necessary to empower individuals to resist manipulation, participate in informed discourse, and strengthen the bonds of community. Technology is simply a tool and is not inherently evil. Despite these counterarguments, the erosion of societal structures through technology remains a serious threat that must be addressed with vigilance, critical thinking, and a commitment to shared values. While technology offers benefits, its potential to undermine the foundations of society cannot be ignored, and a balanced approach is required. The fate of society may depend on our ability to harness the power of technology for good while resisting the chaotic forces that seek to tear us apart. But if society is on a collision course with chaos, can anyone divert us from such a dark fate? Building on the insidious erosion of societal structures, we now confront an equally disturbing phenomenon: cultural fragmentation. Where societal erosion represents the weakening of shared institutions and values, cultural fragmentation signifies the active division of societies against themselves. This is not simply about different cultures clashing, but rather the internal fracturing of shared identity, values, and understanding within a single culture. Our objective is to dissect how technology and manipulation serve as potent tools to divide cultures, weakening their foundations and rendering them susceptible to the chaotic influence of NYARLATHOTEP. The crawling chaos thrives not on brute force, but on subtly exacerbating existing societal fault lines, political ideologies, religious beliefs, economic disparities, and leveraging technology to widen these divides into unbridgeable chasms. Consider the modern culture wars, often fought online, where carefully crafted narratives and targeted disinformation campaigns amplify existing disagreements into full-blown conflicts. Historically, cultural fragmentation has often been a precursor to societal collapse. The decline of the Roman Empire, for instance, wasn't solely due to external barbarian invasions. Internal political divisions, economic inequality, and the erosion of traditional Roman values all contributed to a weakening of the empire's social fabric. Roman leaders manipulated information and exploited existing social tensions, promoting divisive ideologies to maintain their grip on power, ultimately hastening the empire's demise. Similarly, the Protestant Reformation saw the printing press used as a tool to disseminate dissenting religious views, sparking widespread conflict and cultural upheaval across Europe. But consider the difference between the printing press and the Internet. The modern digital landscape amplifies the potential for cultural fragmentation exponentially. The speed and scale of information dissemination through technology dwarfs anything seen in previous eras. While propaganda efforts in the 20th century were limited by geography and access to media, today's targeted disinformation campaigns can reach millions of people instantly, tailoring messages to exploit individual vulnerabilities and pre-existing biases. This is not merely a matter of differing opinions. It's a calculated assault on shared reality, undermining trust and sowing discord. Cultural fragmentation can be defined as the breakdown of shared values, beliefs, and traditions within a society, leading to a loss of cohesion and a weakening of social bonds. It's not the end of culture, but a violent shattering, like a mirror broken into countless shards, each reflecting a distorted image of the whole. This includes the loss of shared experiences, a breakdown of common language, and the embrace of increasingly divergent values. Where once a society might have found common ground in shared narratives, historical figures, or cultural touchstones, today, those very elements are often battlegrounds for ideological conflict. Technology, particularly social media and online platforms, acts as a powerful accelerant in this process. The creation of echo chambers, the promotion of divisive content, and the amplification of extremist voices all contribute to a fractured cultural landscape. Algorithms, designed to maximize engagement, often prioritize sensational and polarizing content, exposing users to increasingly extreme viewpoints and reinforcing their existing biases. Think of it like a hall of mirrors, where each reflection distorts reality further, leading individuals down increasingly isolated and radical paths. Adding to this volatile mix is the rise of weaponized narratives, carefully crafted stories and disinformation campaigns designed to exploit existing cultural tensions and sow discord within societies. These narratives often reinterpret or distort historical events, playing on grievances, fears, and prejudices to fuel political agendas. Consider how historical narratives surrounding the American Civil War are often used to justify contemporary political positions, perpetuating divisions and hindering reconciliation. What most people miss is that this is not merely organic disagreement, but deliberate manipulation for strategic gain. Social media's role in fueling political polarization is undeniable. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube have become breeding grounds for echo chambers, where algorithms amplify divisive content and reinforce existing biases. Case studies have shown how these platforms contribute to political fragmentation by prioritizing content that aligns with users' pre-existing beliefs, creating filter bubbles that shield individuals from opposing viewpoints. This is not simply a matter of personal preference. It's a systemic problem that distorts perceptions of reality and undermines the possibility of meaningful dialogue. The spread of conspiracy theories and disinformation through online platforms poses an even greater threat. Narratives like QAnon, which falsely accused prominent Democrats of engaging in satanic rituals and child sex trafficking, have undermined trust in institutions, manipulated public opinion, and even incited violence. The January 6th Capitol attack in Washington, D.C. serves as a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of online disinformation, demonstrating how easily false narratives can spread and incite extremism. This is not simply a matter of fringe beliefs. It's a dangerous trend that threatens the stability of democratic societies. Targeted advertising and personalized content further fragment societies. Data analytics are used to target specific cultural groups with tailored advertising campaigns, exploiting cultural differences and manipulating consumer behavior. This constant bombardment of personalized messaging erodes shared values and creates a society that is increasingly atomized and susceptible to manipulation. Consider how political campaigns use targeted advertising to appeal to specific demographic groups, reinforcing existing biases and further polarizing the electorate. This is not simply a matter of marketing. It's a strategic effort to divide and conquer. The phenomenon of cancel culture, while intended to hold individuals accountable for harmful behavior, has also been used to stifle free speech, create a climate of fear, and further polarize societies. The fear of online shaming and the potential for professional and social ostracism can discourage individuals from expressing dissenting opinions, contributing to a decline in civil discourse and hindering the search for common ground. This is not simply a matter of holding people accountable. It's a complex issue with potentially chilling effects on free expression and open debate. All of these examples directly connect to NYARLATHOTEP's overarching goal of sowing chaos and undermining the foundations of order and stability. Cultural fragmentation is a key tactic in his strategy to advance his agenda and those of the outer gods. By exploiting vulnerabilities such as the desire for belonging, the fear of the other, and the tendency to seek out information that confirms existing biases, NYARLATHOTEP manipulates societies from within, turning them against themselves. But what makes societies so vulnerable to cultural fragmentation? The desire for belonging is a powerful force, leading individuals to seek out groups and communities that reinforce their existing beliefs and values. The fear of the other, often fueled by prejudice and disinformation, can create deep divisions and animosity between different cultural groups. The tendency to seek out information that confirms existing biases, known as confirmation bias, further reinforces these divisions, creating echo chambers where individuals are only exposed to information that aligns with their pre-existing viewpoints. The long-term consequences of cultural fragmentation are dire, potentially leading to the decline of civic engagement, the rise of extremism, and the potential for social unrest and violence. A society that is fractured and divided is less able to address its challenges effectively, making it more vulnerable to manipulation and control. What if our reliance on technology makes it all the easier for the crawling chaos to get us to destroy ourselves? However, it is important to acknowledge that cultural diversity can be a source of strength and innovation, and that not all forms of cultural fragmentation are necessarily negative. Cultural exchange can broaden perspectives, challenge assumptions, and foster creativity. It is also essential to protect free speech and allow for a wide range of viewpoints to be expressed, even those that may be unpopular or controversial. Suppressing dissenting voices can stifle innovation and lead to oppression. Responsible technological development and ethical guidelines can also mitigate the risks of cultural fragmentation. Technology is simply a tool and can be used to promote understanding and cooperation, rather than division and conflict. Despite these counterarguments, cultural fragmentation remains a serious threat to social stability, and it is essential to resist the forces that seek to divide us. While cultural diversity can be a source of strength, it is also important to preserve shared values and traditions to ensure that societies remain cohesive and resilient in the face of chaos. Technology's ability to undermine the foundations of society cannot be ignored, and a balanced approach is required. The threads of culture are fragile, but when woven together with empathy and understanding, they can create a tapestry that withstands even the darkest storms, so long as the crawling chaos does not unravel the loom. If the forces of chaos seek to divide us, how can we rebuild trust and foster unity in a fragmented world? We will now explore strategies for promoting dialogue, empathy, and critical thinking, as well as the importance of preserving shared values and traditions. Building upon our exploration of cultural fragmentation, we now confront an even more insidious threat: the deliberate replacement of organic cultures with a synthetic imitation. NYARLATHOTEP's ultimate goal is not simply to divide cultures, but to supplant them entirely with a new, globalized culture, one meticulously crafted to align with his chaotic designs. We will now explore how technology can be wielded to create and disseminate this synthetic culture, a tool that erodes traditional values, promotes conformity, and ultimately serves as an instrument of manipulation and control. Be warned, this cultural replacement is often subtle and insidious, occurring without most people realizing they are being influenced, furthering a Lovecraftian sense of dread. Historically, attempts to forge and impose a dominant culture are nothing new. Consider the Roman Empire's relentless efforts to Romanize conquered territories, imposing their language, laws, and customs upon diverse populations. Or the Soviet Union's calculated attempts to spread communist ideology, suppressing local traditions and manipulating information to create a new Soviet identity. The Roman Empire used architectural marvels and public spectacles to showcase their power and cultural superiority, while the Soviets employed art, education, and propaganda to indoctrinate their citizens with communist ideals. However, both of these attempts at cultural domination faced limitations imposed by geography, communication, and resistance from local populations. Can you see how technology nullifies these historic limitations? Synthetic culture can be defined as a manufactured set of values, beliefs, and traditions, carefully designed to replace or undermine existing organic cultures. Driven by commercial or political interests, this culture is not born of genuine shared experience, but rather force-fed through various channels. Technology, in particular, has become the ultimate vector for this synthetic culture, allowing it to spread like a virus through social media, online entertainment, and targeted advertising. While this process isn't always intentional or malicious, the relentless pursuit of profit, efficiency, and control can often lead to the creation of a synthetic culture that is devoid of meaning and authenticity, furthering the theme of cosmic indifference so prevalent in Lovecraftian horror. Consider the pervasive role of social media in promoting a globalized consumer culture. Advertising and marketing campaigns, meticulously crafted to target specific demographics, relentlessly reinforce certain values and beliefs, eroding organic cultural identities in the process. Take Coca-Cola, for example, a global brand that has successfully embedded itself in countless cultures around the world. Its marketing campaigns often associate the product with universal values like happiness, friendship, and celebration, transcending cultural boundaries but simultaneously diluting local traditions. McDonald's employs similar tactics, adapting its menu to local tastes while still promoting a standardized, global brand identity. In what ways can these seemingly harmless marketing tactics be a form of cultural manipulation? Hollywood and the entertainment industry exert an equally powerful influence, shaping global perceptions of beauty, success, and happiness. These narratives, often promoting a narrow and superficial worldview, are then disconnected from the complexities of reality, almost as if they were written by the outer gods themselves. Think of the impact of Hollywood films on global fashion trends or lifestyle choices. The pursuit of the Hollywood dream, often portrayed as a glamorous and attainable ideal, can lead to feelings of inadequacy and dissatisfaction, especially in cultures where such lifestyles are unattainable or incompatible with traditional values. This is especially disturbing given the way some of these films are created. Even more insidious is the use of algorithms to personalize online experiences. This creates filter bubbles that reinforce existing biases, limiting exposure to diverse perspectives and undermining critical thinking, ultimately fracturing societal norms. YouTube's recommendation algorithm, for example, has been shown to lead users down rabbit holes of increasingly extreme content, reinforcing existing biases and limiting exposure to alternative viewpoints. This creates echo chambers where individuals are only exposed to information that confirms their pre-existing beliefs, further polarizing societies and undermining the possibility of meaningful dialogue. Is this echo chamber effect accidental or a deliberate strategy? The phenomenon of cultural appropriation further fragments societies. The commodification and trivialization of cultural traditions undermine shared values and serve NYARLATHOTEP's purpose. Consider the ethical implications of using indigenous cultural symbols in commercial advertising. The appropriation of Native American headdresses in fashion, for example, trivializes their cultural significance and perpetuates harmful stereotypes. This commodification of culture not only disrespects the original traditions, but also contributes to the erosion of cultural identity and the fragmentation of societies. All of these examples connect directly to NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence. The creation and dissemination of a synthetic culture is a key tactic in his strategy to undermine order and stability, replacing it with a chaotic simulacrum. The desire for belonging, the fear of being left behind, and the tendency to seek out easy answers and simplistic narratives all make societies vulnerable to this form of cultural manipulation. By preying on these vulnerabilities, NYARLATHOTEP subtly reshapes cultural landscapes, twisting them to his own chaotic ends. The long-term consequences of this cultural replacement are dire. The loss of identity, the erosion of community, and the potential for social unrest and violence advance a Lovecraftian sense of cosmic horror. A society that has lost its cultural moorings is more susceptible to manipulation, control, and ultimately self-destruction. The erosion of local traditions and the homogenization of culture can lead to a sense of alienation and rootlessness, creating fertile ground for extremism and social unrest. Are we sleepwalking into a future where culture is nothing more than a commodity to be bought and sold? If our cultures are being overwritten, can we rewrite the code? This leads us to a discussion about reclaiming cultural agency and resisting the forces of cultural manipulation. We will now explore strategies for promoting cultural preservation, supporting local communities, and fostering critical thinking, empowering individuals to resist manipulation. However, we need to acknowledge that cultural exchange can be a positive force, promoting understanding and cooperation between different societies. Cultural exchange programs, for example, can foster empathy, broaden perspectives, and challenge preconceived notions. Artistic freedom also allows for a wide range of cultural expression, even that which challenges traditional norms and values. The problem is that these concepts are not being used responsibly. We also need responsible technological development and ethical guidelines to mitigate the risks of cultural manipulation. Could technology instead promote understanding and cooperation? Despite these counterarguments, the creation and dissemination of a synthetic culture remains a serious threat to social stability, and it is essential to resist the forces that seek to homogenize and control us. While cultural exchange can be a positive force, it is also important to preserve the richness and diversity of local cultures to ensure that societies remain resilient and authentic in the face of chaos. The crawling chaos seeks to erase the beauty of the world and replace it with a hollow imitation, but the human spirit, in all its messy and imperfect glory, may yet prove to be his undoing if we don't let technology overwrite it first. If our cultures are being systematically replaced, what steps can we take to reclaim our cultural heritage and resist the forces of homogenization? Building on the deliberate distortion of culture, we now confront an even more insidious tactic employed by NYARLATHOTEP, the subtle manipulation and commodification of spiritual practices. Where once sacred traditions connected communities, now they are sold back to us as trendy products. This is not mere commerce, but a calculated erosion of genuine spiritual experience, a transformation of the divine into a mere commodity. What are the implications of turning the sacred into something you can buy? Historically, spiritual practices were deeply interwoven with the fabric of daily life. Indigenous healing ceremonies provided connection and community, ancient mystery religions offered paths to enlightenment, and traditional folk beliefs offered frameworks for understanding the natural world. These practices weren't mere hobbies, but integral components of a cohesive worldview. Contrast this with the modern trend of extracting elements from these traditions and selling them as standalone products. Yoga, once a deeply spiritual practice rooted in Hinduism, has become a fitness trend for toned abs. Meditation, an ancient technique for achieving inner peace, is now marketed as a stress reduction tool for overworked professionals. What has been lost in this translation? Spiritual commodification can be defined as the process of turning sacred practices, beliefs, and symbols into marketable goods or services, stripping them of their original meaning and reducing them to consumer products. It's the transformation of the intangible into something that can be bought, sold, and consumed. The key characteristic is the severing of the practice from its original cultural and spiritual context, reducing it to a hollow imitation of its former self. This is not simple trade or a spiritual path, but a shallow replacement. Consider the marketing of yoga and meditation. While there's no doubt that these practices can offer physical and mental health benefits, their spiritual underpinnings are often ignored or downplayed. Yoga studios frequently prioritize physical fitness over spiritual growth, offering calorie-burning classes that have little to do with the philosophical depths of yoga's origins. Meditation apps promise stress reduction and improved focus, but rarely delve into the deeper questions of meaning and purpose that have driven meditative practice for centuries. In what ways are these practices being distorted and trivialized? The selling of crystals, tarot cards, and other occult objects offers another compelling example. These items, once used in specific spiritual contexts with deep symbolic meaning, are now marketed as tools for self-improvement or manifestation. Crystal sellers make extravagant claims about their products' healing powers, often without any scientific evidence or understanding of their traditional uses. Tarot cards are sold as tools for predicting the future, divorced from their historical roots, as a tool for psychological insight and self-reflection. How many people are truly aware of the rich history and symbolism behind these objects, or are they simply buying into a trendy aesthetic? Even more insidious is the rise of spiritual tourism, where individuals travel to sacred sites and participate in indigenous ceremonies without any understanding of the cultural protocols or ethical considerations involved. Tourists flock to ayahuasca retreats in the Amazon, seeking spiritual enlightenment without understanding the profound cultural significance of the ceremony or the potential harm they may be causing to indigenous communities. Companies sell sweat lodge ceremonies, often without properly trained facilitators, leading to dangerous and even fatal consequences. Are these seekers genuinely engaging with another culture, or are they simply looking for a spiritual experience to check off their bucket list? This commodification of spirituality is no accident. NYARLATHOTEP understands that by turning our sacred spaces into shopping malls, he can erode genuine spiritual experiences and replace them with a shallow consumerism that leaves people feeling empty and disconnected. The constant bombardment of advertising, promising fulfillment through material possessions and fleeting experiences, further undermines our ability to connect with something deeper and more meaningful. This relentless pursuit of profit, disguised as spiritual enlightenment, is a key tactic in NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic plan. This is why societies are vulnerable to this form of manipulation. The desire for quick fixes, the fear of death, and the tendency to seek out easy answers and simplistic narratives make us susceptible to these shallow substitutes for genuine spirituality. We live in a culture that values instant gratification and superficiality, making us easy prey for those who seek to profit from our spiritual longings. The constant pressure to achieve, acquire, and consume leaves us feeling empty and disconnected, driving us to seek solace in these commodified spiritual practices. What does our desire for quick, easy solutions reveal about our spiritual state? The long-term consequences of this commodification are dire. The loss of meaning, the erosion of community, and the potential for spiritual abuse and exploitation all contribute to societal and cultural breakdown. When sacred practices are reduced to mere commodities, they lose their power to connect us to something greater than ourselves. The erosion of authentic spiritual communities leaves us feeling isolated and alone, vulnerable to manipulation and control. The potential for spiritual abuse and exploitation is ever present, as unscrupulous individuals take advantage of vulnerable seekers. What is to stop people from preying on others in the commodified spiritual space? The ethical implications of profiting from sacred practices cannot be overstated. This can undermine indigenous cultures, disrespect spiritual traditions, and contribute to a general sense of meaninglessness and alienation. Indigenous communities are often exploited for their spiritual knowledge and traditions, their sacred sites desecrated, and their cultural heritage commodified for the benefit of outsiders. The trivialization of spiritual practices contributes to a general sense of meaninglessness and alienation, leaving individuals feeling lost and disconnected in a world that seems increasingly empty and superficial. This has led to societal and cultural breakdown. However, the commodification and distortion of spiritual practices are not the entire story. Consider those individuals who find genuine meaning and connection through these practices, or the fact that adaptation is necessary for survival in a globalized world. What about commerce that does not exploit or distort? The rise of online communities and resources are making diverse spiritual traditions more accessible than ever before. The key is to preserve cultural traditions in a globalized world through respectful and ethical engagement with spiritual practices from other cultures, promoting understanding and collaboration rather than appropriation and exploitation. This is where we can make a difference. Despite these counterarguments, the commodification of spirituality remains a serious threat to cultural integrity, and it is essential to resist the forces that seek to profit from our longing for meaning and connection. Technology can be used to connect us with authentic spiritual communities and resources, empowering us to reclaim our spiritual agency and resist manipulation, but we must be cautious. The crawling chaos seeks to turn our sacred spaces into shopping malls, but the human spirit, when grounded in authenticity and respect, can create gardens of meaning that flourish even in the most barren landscapes, so long as we retain a sense of our past. But if our ancient connections to the divine are being sold back to us, how can we reclaim our spiritual autonomy? Following the manipulation of spiritual practices, we arrive at an even more subtle and pervasive tactic, the manipulation of truth itself. This isn't mere disagreement or differing perspectives, but a deliberate and systematic effort to distort, suppress, or replace objective reality with false narratives and deceptive propaganda. What happens when the very foundations of reality become malleable? Throughout history, truth manipulation has been a tool of control, used by those in power to sway opinion and maintain their grip on society. Consider the use of propaganda in wartime, where entire populations are fed carefully crafted narratives designed to demonize the enemy and galvanize support for the war effort. During World War II, both the Allied and Axis powers employed sophisticated propaganda campaigns to control information, manipulate public opinion, and suppress dissent. In Nazi Germany, state-controlled media disseminated blatant lies and distortions of reality, portraying Jews as subhuman and promoting the idea of Aryan supremacy. Similarly, in the Soviet Union, the government controlled all sources of information, rewriting history and suppressing any voices that challenged the official narrative. How do these historical manipulations compare to today's digital landscape? In today's world, technology has created new and more sophisticated ways to manipulate truth, making it harder than ever to distinguish between reality and falsehood. Foreign governments can now spread misinformation via social media to sow discord and influence elections, and AI-powered deepfakes can create convincing fake videos that can be used to damage reputations and manipulate public opinion. Unlike the relatively crude propaganda techniques of the past, these modern methods are highly targeted and personalized, exploiting individual vulnerabilities and biases to maximize their impact. Are we truly equipped to navigate this new era of digital deception? Truth manipulation can be defined as a deliberate distortion of facts, often used to sway opinion or maintain power. Gaslighting, a psychological manipulation tactic, is used to make someone question their sanity and perceptions. For example, in a political campaign, a candidate might deny having made a controversial statement, even when there is video evidence to the contrary, causing voters to question their own memory and perceptions. Reality hacking is a more sophisticated form of manipulation that involves creating simulated realities or manipulating people's perceptions to alter their behavior or beliefs, often achieved through coordinated efforts. What is lost when we can no longer trust our own senses? Consider the use of deepfakes and AI-generated content. A deepfake video of a political leader saying something they never actually said can quickly spread online, manipulating public opinion and potentially swaying an election. It becomes incredibly difficult to detect these manipulations because these techniques are sophisticated and convincing. Conspiracy theories and disinformation spread rapidly through online platforms, undermining trust in institutions, manipulating public opinion, and inciting violence. Take QAnon, for instance, which falsely asserted that prominent Democrats were running a child sex trafficking ring. This theory gained traction through social media, leading to political polarization and even violence. How do algorithms contribute to this problem? Algorithms personalize online experiences, creating filter bubbles and reinforcing existing biases, which limits exposure to diverse perspectives and undermines critical thinking. YouTube's recommendation algorithm can lead users down rabbit holes of increasingly extreme content, reinforcing existing biases and limiting exposure to alternative viewpoints. The phenomenon of astroturfing involves organizations creating fake grassroots movements to promote their agenda, often without disclosing their true identities or intentions. Corporations or political groups might create fake online personas to promote their products or policies, giving the impression of widespread public support. The Mandela effect highlights how faulty human memory can be manipulated and exploited, leading to collective false memories. But here's what most people miss. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a larger pattern of deliberate manipulation. Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's overarching goal of sowing chaos and undermining the foundations of order, it becomes clear that the manipulation of truth is a key tactic in his strategy to control and manipulate humanity, creating a world of madness. The desire for certainty, the fear of uncertainty, and the tendency to trust authority figures make societies vulnerable to this form of manipulation. When people are desperate for answers, they are more likely to fall prey to simplistic narratives and charismatic leaders who offer easy solutions. What happens when people lose faith in the very concept of truth? The long-term consequences of this manipulation are dire, leading to the erosion of trust, the breakdown of social cohesion, and the potential for societal collapse. When people no longer trust each other or their institutions, societies can become dysfunctional, unable to address common problems or maintain order. The erosion of trust can also lead to increased polarization and conflict, as people become more entrenched in their own beliefs and less willing to engage in dialogue with those who hold different views. Is there a point of no return for societies drowning in disinformation? The ethical implications of manipulating truth are clear. It undermines democratic values, violates human rights, and creates a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their lives. When people are constantly bombarded with lies and propaganda, they lose their ability to discern truth from falsehood, making them vulnerable to manipulation and control. This ultimately undermines individual autonomy and freedom, creating a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their own lives. Are we sacrificing our freedom on the altar of convenience and technology? Summarizing the ways in which technology is used to manipulate truth, we see a clear connection to NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence. If truth is under attack, how can we defend it? Can technology somehow be used to combat these attacks, or is it simply too powerful a tool to be wielded responsibly? We will need to analyze the potential for resisting this manipulation and explore strategies for promoting critical thinking, media literacy, and ethical communication, empowering individuals to resist manipulation and reclaim their sense of reality. However, there are different perspectives on truth, and what one person considers to be true, another may consider to be false, a perspective often influenced by culture, belief system, and personal experience. What some would call fake news, others would call alternative facts. This is a nuanced discussion about perspective that warrants further exploration. It is also important to protect free speech and allow for a wide range of viewpoints to be expressed, even those that may be unpopular or controversial, but there is a line. It is essential to remember the need for responsible technological development and ethical guidelines to mitigate the risks of truth manipulation and ensure that technology is used to promote understanding and cooperation, rather than division and conflict. Some level of deception is inevitable in human interaction, such as in advertising or politics, and does not require the invocation of chaotic entities. Reaffirming the core argument that the manipulation of truth is a serious threat to individual freedom and social stability, it is essential to resist the forces that seek to control and deceive us. Synthesizing the information presented, it is clear that while technology can be used to manipulate truth, it can also be used to promote critical thinking, media literacy, and ethical communication, empowering us to reclaim our sense of reality and resist the chaotic influence of NYARLATHOTEP. The crawling chaos thrives in a world of lies and illusions, but the human spirit, when grounded in truth and reason, can pierce the darkness and create a world where honesty and integrity prevail, unless we let technology be the puppet master. What new shape will this deception take in the future? Building upon the manipulation of truth, we now confront an even more insidious tactic: controlled opposition. This is where the forces of chaos subtly manage dissent, turning potential rebellion into a tool for maintaining power and sowing further discord, advancing their manipulative schemes. But what does controlled opposition actually entail, and how does it operate in the shadows of both history and our modern world? To understand the reach of controlled opposition, we must first acknowledge its historical use as a strategic tool, with examples stretching back centuries. During the French Revolution, figures like Joseph Fouché, the head of the French police, infiltrated and manipulated various factions, from the Jacobins to the Royalists, ensuring no single group gained enough power to truly threaten the ruling elite. Similarly, during the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union created and manipulated opposition groups in other countries to advance their own interests and destabilize their adversaries. The British Empire used divide-and-conquer tactics, deliberately exacerbating tensions between different ethnic and religious groups within its colonies to prevent unified resistance. How do these past manipulations compare to the digital battlegrounds of today? In our modern era, controlled opposition has taken on new and more insidious forms, leveraging the power of technology to manipulate public opinion and suppress genuine dissent. Social media bots and trolls are used to amplify divisive messages, drown out dissenting voices, and create a false sense of consensus. Fake news websites and propaganda outlets masquerade as independent news sources, spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories to undermine trust in legitimate media. The scale and sophistication of these modern tactics far surpass anything seen in the past, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between genuine dissent and manufactured opposition. Are we truly aware of the puppeteers behind the scenes? Controlled opposition can be defined as a tactic whereby an entity secretly controls or influences an opposition movement, effectively neutralizing or redirecting its efforts. The goal is not necessarily to eliminate opposition, but to manage and contain it, ensuring that it poses no real threat to the established order. This can manifest in various forms: the infiltration of activist groups by agents provocateurs, the creation of fake grassroots movements, astroturfing, to promote specific agendas, or the promotion of divisive narratives that pit different groups against each other. But what is the key difference between genuine dissent and manufactured opposition, and how can we learn to tell them apart? One of the most effective tools of controlled opposition is the strategic use of government-funded NGOs. While many NGOs genuinely work to promote positive social change, others may serve as fronts for government agencies or powerful corporations, advancing their own political and economic agendas under the guise of independent activism. For example, organizations funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, have been accused of meddling in the internal affairs of foreign countries, supporting opposition groups that align with U.S. interests. Similarly, corporations may fund environmental NGOs to promote their own greenwashing campaigns, diverting attention from their harmful practices and creating a false image of social responsibility. Are these organizations truly independent, or are they merely puppets on a string? The use of social media bots and trolls is another increasingly common tactic of controlled opposition. These automated accounts are used to spread disinformation, amplify divisive messages, and harass dissenting voices, creating a hostile online environment that discourages genuine debate. During the 2016 U.S. presidential election, for example, Russian-linked bot networks spread disinformation and conspiracy theories to influence voters and sow discord. And similarly, during Brexit, coordinated bot campaigns amplified divisive messages and suppressed pro-EU voices. The sheer volume of these automated accounts can overwhelm genuine voices, making it difficult to have a rational discussion about important issues. But here's what most people miss. This isn't just about influencing elections. It's about eroding trust in the very foundations of democracy. Perhaps the most shocking tactic of controlled opposition is the use of false flag operations, where governments or other actors carry out attacks and blame them on their enemies, creating a pretext for war or repression. The Reichstag fire in 1933, which the Nazis blamed on communists, was used to justify the suppression of political opposition and the establishment of a totalitarian regime. The Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964, which was used to justify the escalation of the Vietnam War, has since been revealed to have been based on faulty intelligence and manipulated evidence. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. What if some of the most horrific events in history were carefully orchestrated to manipulate the masses? Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's core attributes, it becomes clear that controlled opposition is a key tactic in his strategy to sow chaos, manipulate humanity, and undermine the foundations of order and stability. The desire for simple solutions, the tendency to trust authority figures, and the lack of critical thinking skills make societies vulnerable to this form of manipulation. When people are desperate for answers, they are more likely to fall prey to simplistic narratives and charismatic leaders who offer easy solutions, paving the way for NYARLATHOTEP's influence to spread. How easily are we manipulated by our need for order? The long-term consequences of controlled opposition are dire, leading to the erosion of trust, the decline of civic engagement, and the potential for social unrest and violence. When people no longer trust each other or their institutions, societies can become dysfunctional, unable to address common problems or maintain order. This erosion of trust can also lead to increased polarization and conflict, as people become more entrenched in their own beliefs and less willing to engage in dialogue with those who hold different views. But what is the ultimate destination for societies walking this path of distrust and division? The ethical implications of using controlled opposition tactics are clear. They undermine democratic values, violate human rights, and create a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their lives. When people are constantly bombarded with lies and propaganda, they lose their ability to discern truth from falsehood, making them vulnerable to manipulation and control. This ultimately undermines individual autonomy and freedom, creating a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their own lives. Are we willing to sacrifice our freedom for the illusion of security? Summarizing the ways in which controlled opposition is used to manipulate and control societies, we see a clear connection to NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence. If controlled opposition is so pervasive, how can we recognize it and resist its influence? But what if some of those who accuse others of being controlled opposition are themselves part of the problem? This is the paradox we must face as we turn to strategies for promoting critical thinking, independent research, and ethical communication, empowering individuals to resist manipulation and reclaim their sense of reality. Of course, there are legitimate reasons for governments and organizations to engage in covert operations, such as protecting national security or preventing terrorism. Intelligence agencies often rely on secrecy and deception to gather information and disrupt enemy activities. Balancing transparency and accountability with the need for secrecy is a complex and ongoing challenge. Furthermore, a robust and independent media is essential to hold those in power accountable and expose instances of controlled opposition. It is also important to consider the possibility that some groups accused of being controlled opposition are simply ineffective, misguided, or pursuing unpopular ideas. Despite these considerations, controlled opposition remains a serious threat to individual freedom and social stability. While there may be legitimate reasons for secrecy and covert operations, it is crucial to remain vigilant and to challenge those in power when they abuse their authority or engage in deceptive practices. The crawling chaos thrives in a world of shadows and deception, but the human spirit, when grounded in truth and reason, can expose the lies and create a world where transparency and accountability prevail, so long as we can avoid the snares of controlled opposition designed to keep us in the dark. What defense do we have against the chaos it creates? Building on our exploration of controlled opposition and the subtle manipulation of truth, we now turn to another powerful instrument of influence, art. Is it merely a reflection of society, or could it be something more sinister? This section will explore how art can be used not just to reflect chaos, but to actively create it, serving as a vehicle for manipulation, societal disruption, and the corruption of the human spirit, subtly advancing NYARLATHOTEP's unknowable agenda. What if seemingly innocuous art forms are subtly influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, furthering a Lovecraftian horror we barely perceive? Throughout history, art has served as a mirror, reflecting the values, beliefs, and aspirations of civilizations. From the inspiring sculptures of ancient Greece, which embodied ideals of beauty and heroism, to the majestic cathedrals of the Middle Ages, which conveyed profound spiritual truths, art has been a powerful force for unity and upliftment. The Renaissance saw art used to promote national identity and celebrate human potential, while the Romantic era embraced emotional expression and the beauty of the natural world. But here's what most people miss. Art can also be a weapon, a tool for sowing discord and manipulating the masses, slowly corrupting us all from within. In stark contrast to art's uplifting potential, history is replete with examples of its use for darker purposes. Propaganda posters in Nazi Germany demonized entire groups of people and glorified violence, while satirical cartoons during the French Revolution attacked political opponents and fueled social unrest. Soviet-era art promoted communist ideology and suppressed dissent, while disturbing imagery has been used throughout time to undermine established norms and promote nihilistic ideologies, such as during the iconoclasm. The power of art to shape human consciousness makes it a prime target for those seeking to manipulate and control society, a fact that NYARLATHOTEP and his disciples undoubtedly understand. But how can art be used to promote and celebrate chaos? Chaotic art can be defined as art that intentionally subverts established norms, promotes nihilism, or celebrates the darker aspects of human nature. This art mirrors NYARLATHOTEP's agenda of sowing chaos and despair by attacking the very foundations of order and meaning. It acts as a vector for psychological manipulation, subtly influencing viewers' emotions, beliefs, and behaviors, like a whisper in the crowd that bends minds. Chaotic art often relies on shock value, disturbing imagery, and the rejection of traditional aesthetic values to create a sense of unease and disorientation. Consider this. If our minds are constantly bombarded with chaotic imagery, what happens to our ability to perceive truth and beauty? The concept of mimetic warfare provides another lens through which to view chaotic art. Art can be used to spread viral ideas and narratives that destabilize societies and promote division. Online memes, for example, can be weaponized to spread propaganda, incite violence, or undermine trust in institutions. A seemingly harmless image or catchphrase can quickly spread throughout the internet, carrying with it a hidden message or agenda. This mimetic warfare can erode social cohesion and make societies more vulnerable to manipulation and control. But how do these seemingly innocuous images gain such power over our minds? Dadaism and Surrealism serve as potent examples of art movements that challenge traditional notions of beauty, order, and reason. Emerging in the aftermath of World War I, Dadaism rejected logic and embraced absurdity, reflecting a profound sense of disillusionment and societal breakdown. Artists like Marcel Duchamp and Tristan Tzara created works that were intentionally nonsensical and provocative, aiming to shock and disorient viewers. Surrealism, while more dreamlike and imaginative, also challenged conventional aesthetics and explored the darker aspects of the human psyche. But could these movements, in their rejection of order, have inadvertently opened a door to the crawling chaos? The use of disturbing or violent imagery in contemporary art is another area of concern. Many contemporary artists use shocking and unsettling images to provoke strong emotional responses and challenge viewers' moral sensibilities. These works can create a sense of unease and disorientation, leaving viewers feeling disturbed and unsettled. Consider the works of artists like Francis Bacon, whose paintings often depict distorted and grotesque figures in states of anguish and torment. Or consider the films of directors like David Cronenberg, who explore themes of body horror, mutation, and psychological breakdown. Are these artists simply reflecting the darkness within the human soul, or are they actively amplifying it? Nihilistic and existentialist themes have also exerted a powerful influence on literature and film, subtly eroding society. Narratives that undermine people's sense of purpose and meaning, leading to a loss of hope and a sense of despair, are now commonplace. The works of Albert Camus and Samuel Beckett, for example, explore themes of alienation, absurdity, and the meaninglessness of existence. Films like Fight Club and The Matrix question the nature of reality and challenge viewers to reject societal norms and embrace chaos. This constant bombardment of nihilistic ideas can leave people feeling adrift and disconnected, making them more vulnerable to manipulation. But is this merely artistic expression, or is it a deliberate attempt to undermine the foundations of meaning and purpose? Subliminal messages and psychological manipulation techniques are also frequently employed in advertising and entertainment. Advertisers often use suggestive imagery, hidden messages, and carefully crafted narratives to subtly influence viewers' behavior and beliefs without them even being aware of it. These tactics can bypass conscious thought and tap into primal emotions and desires, making them incredibly effective. Films and television shows also use psychological techniques to manipulate viewers' emotions and create a sense of identification with certain characters or ideas. What if this is a form of subtle mind control, slowly shaping our desires and beliefs without our conscious consent? Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's core attributes manipulation, deception, and the sowing of discord, it becomes clear that artistic expression can be a powerful tool for shaping human consciousness and furthering his agenda of societal breakdown and the rise of chaos. The desire for novelty, the rejection of tradition, and the tendency to be drawn to the sensational and the shocking make societies vulnerable to these forms of artistic manipulation. When people are constantly bombarded with chaotic imagery and nihilistic ideas, they become desensitized to violence, lose their sense of purpose, and become more susceptible to manipulation and control. But what makes us so vulnerable to these subtle forms of manipulation? The long-term consequences of the proliferation of chaotic art are dire, potentially leading to the erosion of moral values, the decline of social cohesion, and societal collapse. When people lose their sense of purpose and meaning, they become more prone to violence, addiction, and other destructive behaviors. The erosion of moral values can lead to a breakdown of social norms and a decline in civic engagement. This can create a world where truth and meaning are increasingly elusive, paving the way for NYARLATHOTEP's influence to spread, aligning perfectly with Lovecraftian themes of cosmic indifference. But here's what most people miss. The most dangerous art is not always the most obvious. Sometimes it's the subtle, insidious messages that slip under our radar that do the most damage. The ethical implications of using art to manipulate and control people are profound. It undermines individual autonomy, violates human rights, and creates a world where truth and meaning are increasingly elusive. When art is used as a weapon, it destroys trust, fosters division, and makes it impossible to have a rational discussion about important issues. This ultimately undermines individual freedom and creates a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their own lives. Are we willing to sacrifice our freedom for the sake of artistic expression, or do we need to establish some ethical boundaries? Summarizing the ways in which art can be used as a tool for chaos and manipulation, we see a clear connection to NYARLATHOTEP's sinister influence. But if art can be used to promote chaos, can it also be used to resist it? This leads us to a broader discussion about how these subtle influences interact to form societal norms and how individuals can become more aware and resistant to them. If art is a battlefield for the soul, how do we arm ourselves against these subtle attacks and protect our minds from the crawling chaos? Of course, not all subversive art is inherently evil, and some of it can be a valuable tool for social commentary, challenging established norms, and promoting critical thinking. Art can be a powerful force for good, exposing injustice, promoting empathy, and inspiring social change. Furthermore, artistic freedom is essential for a healthy society, and censorship can be a dangerous weapon in the hands of those seeking to suppress dissent. It is also worth noting that art is subjective, and what is chaotic to one person may not be chaotic to another. Despite these considerations, it is essential to be aware of the potential for art to be used as a tool for chaos and manipulation. It is crucial to develop media literacy and critical thinking skills to empower individuals to distinguish between art that is genuinely thought-provoking and art that is simply manipulative or exploitative. We must also be willing to engage with challenging and disturbing art, rather than simply censoring or ignoring it. The crawling chaos may seek to corrupt our artistic expression and turn it into a weapon of despair, but the human spirit, when grounded in truth and beauty, can create works of art that illuminate the darkness and inspire us to resist the forces of chaos and reclaim our humanity, just as much as technology and the Black Pharaoh. What will art's role be in shaping our future? Building on our exploration of art as a tool for chaos and manipulation, we now turn to an even more insidious technique, predictive programming. Is it merely a reflection of societal anxieties, or could it be a deliberate strategy to shape our perceptions of the future? This section will delve into the disturbing possibility that media and entertainment are not just reflecting societal trends, but actively shaping future events by subtly planting ideas and expectations in our collective consciousness, all according to the crawling chaos grand design. What if the entertainment we consume is subtly preparing us for a reality we would otherwise resist? The origins of predictive programming can be traced back to early forms of propaganda and psychological warfare. Edward Bernays, often hailed as the father of public relations, famously demonstrated how public opinion could be manipulated through carefully crafted campaigns. During World War I and the Cold War, films and posters were used to promote specific ideologies and demonize enemies. These early forms of influence often involved deliberate attempts to shape people's perceptions and behaviors. But here's what's changed. Technology has created new and more effective ways to shape people's expectations and prepare them for future events, and these can be easily manipulated by chaotic forces. How has technology upped the ante in the game of manipulating reality? Predictive programming can be defined as a subtle form of psychological conditioning that uses fictional or artistic depictions to desensitize people to future events, making them more likely to accept or even expect those events to occur. It differs from simple forecasting or trend analysis in that it seeks to actively shape the future, rather than merely predict it. This differs drastically from simple forecasting or trend analysis. Through the normalization of violence, social unrest, or other disruptive events, people become less likely to resist or question them when they actually occur. But it's crucial to understand this. Predictive programming is not necessarily a conscious or coordinated effort. In what ways can predictive programming emerge without conscious control? Consider the 2011 film Contagion, which eerily foreshadowed the COVID-19 pandemic. The film depicted a deadly virus spreading rapidly across the globe, leading to widespread panic, social unrest, and government lockdowns. While the film was intended as a work of fiction, its depiction of a pandemic mirrored reality with disturbing accuracy. Some have argued that Contagion served as a form of predictive programming, preparing audiences for a similar event in the future, or examine the frequent use of terrorist attacks in action movies. For decades, Hollywood has depicted fictional terrorist attacks on major cities, often involving specific tactics and targets. Could these depictions desensitize people to the threat of terrorism, making them more likely to accept it as a normal part of life? But are these examples mere coincidence, or is there something more sinister at play? Specific symbols or themes are also used in art and entertainment to foreshadow specific future events. Occult imagery, for example, is often used in films and TV shows to foreshadow social upheaval or societal transformation. The use of advanced technology, such as artificial intelligence and virtual reality, can also normalize its use and prepare people for a future where these technologies are ubiquitous? And what about the seemingly harmless online challenges and trends that flood social media? Some of these trends can be used to normalize risky behaviors or promote specific ideologies, particularly among young people. But does the frequent exposure to such imagery render us more receptive to similar events when they manifest in real life? Virtual reality and augmented reality offer even greater opportunities for predictive programming. These technologies can be used to create immersive simulations of future events, allowing people to experience those events firsthand. This can further desensitize people to those events and make them more likely to accept them when they occur. Imagine a VR simulation that trains people for active shooter situations or natural disasters. While such simulations could be valuable for preparedness, they could also desensitize people to violence and make them more accepting of a world where such events are commonplace, all guided by the chaos of NYARLATHOTEP. But what happens when these simulations become indistinguishable from reality? Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's overarching goal of sowing chaos, we can see how predictive programming is a key tactic in his strategy to undermine the foundations of order and stability in the world. By normalizing violence, social unrest, and other disruptive events, predictive programming creates a society that is more vulnerable to manipulation and control. The desire for entertainment, the tendency to trust authority figures, and the lack of critical thinking skills make societies vulnerable to this form of manipulation. But what are the long-term consequences of this subtle conditioning? The long-term consequences of predictive programming are dire, potentially leading to the erosion of individual autonomy, the decline of social cohesion, and the potential for societal collapse, aligning perfectly with Lovecraftian themes of cosmic indifference and despair. When people are constantly bombarded with messages that undermine their sense of purpose and meaning, they become more prone to violence, addiction, and other destructive behaviors. The erosion of moral values can lead to a breakdown of social norms and a decline in civic engagement. This creates a world where people are no longer able to make informed decisions about their lives. Are we willingly sleepwalking into a pre-programmed reality? However, it's important to acknowledge that some instances of predictive programming may be unintentional or coincidental, resulting from creative expression or the collective anxieties of a society. Artistic freedom is essential for a healthy society, and censorship can be a dangerous weapon in the hands of those seeking to suppress dissent. Furthermore, it is essential to develop media literacy and critical thinking skills to empower individuals to distinguish between art that is genuinely thought-provoking and art that is simply manipulative or exploitative. Also consider that correlation does not equal causation, and that sometimes art just reflects society. What is the line between artistic expression and manipulation? Despite these considerations, predictive programming is a serious threat to individual freedom and social stability. The crawling chaos seeks to lull us into a state of passive acceptance, but the human spirit, when grounded in truth and critical thinking, can break free from the chains of manipulation and create a world where reality is not a pre-programmed script, but a story we write ourselves, unless we allow NYARLATHOTEP to write it for us. If our minds are being subtly programmed, how can we deprogram ourselves and reclaim our sense of reality? This brings us to a crucial point. If our minds are being subtly programmed, how can we deprogram ourselves and reclaim our sense of reality? Next, we will delve into strategies for promoting critical media consumption, supporting independent artists, and fostering ethical media production. We'll explore ways to take back our cultural agency and resist the forces of manipulation, delving into the importance of critical thinking and creative independence. Building on our exploration of predictive programming, we now turn to an equally subtle and pervasive form of influence, emotional conditioning through art. But is art merely a reflection of our deepest emotions, or can it be a tool to pre-program our responses, subtly shaping our collective attitudes and smoothing the path toward a chaotic future envisioned by NYARLATHOTEP. This section will uncover how art is deliberately used to create specific emotional and psychological responses, preparing populations for the acceptance of realities they might otherwise reject, playing into the overall theme of concealed chaos. How can something as seemingly benign as art be weaponized to manipulate our emotions on a grand scale? Throughout history, art has been employed to evoke specific emotional responses for political and social purposes, extending far beyond simple propaganda. In the medieval period, the Catholic Church utilized religious art, from imposing cathedrals to awe-inspiring paintings and sculptures, to inspire a sense of awe, reverence, and obedience in the largely illiterate population. Similarly, patriotic art in the early 20th century, such as recruitment posters and stirring national anthems, was designed to evoke feelings of loyalty, sacrifice, and national pride. However, the development of psychology and mass communication techniques in the 20th century revolutionized emotional manipulation, leading to more sophisticated methods of influencing audiences through art and media. What was the pivotal shift that transformed art from a source of inspiration to a tool of mass influence? The work of psychologists like Edward Bernays, a nephew of Sigmund Freud, played a crucial role in shaping modern advertising and propaganda. Bernays applied psychological principles to manipulate public opinion, famously demonstrating how to manufacture consent through carefully crafted campaigns. His techniques involved associating products or ideas with specific emotions and desires, effectively bypassing rational thought and appealing directly to the subconscious. Unlike earlier, less sophisticated attempts at emotional manipulation, modern methods use algorithms and data analytics to tailor artistic messages to specific audiences, advancing techniques of precision control. But how does this precision targeting amplify the potential for chaos and manipulation on a societal level? Emotional conditioning through art can be defined as the deliberate use of artistic techniques to evoke specific emotional responses in an audience, with the goal of shaping their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors towards a particular event or idea. It goes beyond simply eliciting emotion to intentionally steering it. This conditioning is achieved through various artistic elements, such as color, imagery, music, narrative structure, and character development, all carefully orchestrated to trigger desired emotional states. Color palettes, for instance, can evoke specific moods. Warm colors like reds and oranges can create feelings of excitement and passion, while cool colors like blues and greens can induce calmness and serenity. But what makes emotional contagion so powerful, and how can it be harnessed for manipulation? Emotional contagion refers to the phenomenon where emotions can spread rapidly through audiences exposed to the same artistic stimuli, creating a shared emotional experience that reinforces specific beliefs and attitudes. For example, the use of music in a film can amplify the emotional impact of a scene and influence viewers' perceptions of the characters. A suspenseful score during a tense scene can heighten feelings of anxiety and anticipation, while a soaring melody during a romantic scene can evoke feelings of love and connection. But how can these techniques, seemingly harmless on the surface, pave the way for NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence? Consider the use of specific color palettes and musical scores in films and TV shows to evoke feelings of anxiety, fear, or despair, subtly preparing audiences for acceptance of negative future scenarios. Dystopian films often use desaturated colors, such as grays and browns, to create a sense of bleakness and hopelessness, while dissonant chords and unsettling sound effects contribute to a feeling of unease and dread. Examine the use of archetypal characters and narratives in popular culture to normalize specific behaviors or attitudes, such as the glorification of violence, the acceptance of authority, or the suppression of dissent. How the portrayal of law enforcement in crime dramas, for instance, can influence viewers' attitudes towards police brutality and civil liberties. But are these narratives deliberately crafted to manipulate our perceptions, or are they merely a reflection of our anxieties? Social media plays a significant role in amplifying emotional conditioning through art, as viral trends and memes can be used to spread specific emotional messages and shape public opinion on sensitive issues. Online challenges or trends, often seemingly harmless, can be used to normalize risky behaviors or promote specific ideologies, particularly among young people. Take, for instance, the proliferation of shock videos or memes that desensitize viewers to violence and suffering. But how far does the influence of social media extend into the subconscious, shaping our deepest beliefs and desires? Virtual reality and augmented reality offer even greater opportunities to create immersive emotional experiences that can deeply condition people's attitudes and beliefs, bypassing their conscious awareness, paving the way for the crawling chaos. VR simulations could be used to train people for specific scenarios, such as active shooter situations or natural disasters, potentially desensitizing them to violence and fear in the process. Envision a virtual world where individuals are repeatedly exposed to propaganda and misinformation, gradually eroding their ability to discern truth from falsehood. Is there an end to this descent into the artificially constructed rabbit hole? In North Korea, for example, state-sponsored art installations are designed to generate unity and devotion to the regime, while also being deeply unsettling to outside observers. These installations often feature massive, synchronized performances, imposing monuments, and idealized depictions of the country's leaders. While seemingly intended to inspire patriotism and loyalty, the sheer scale and uniformity of these displays can create a sense of unease and conformity, highlighting the power of art to shape collective emotions and behaviors. But could these art installations be interpreted as a tool for social control and emotional manipulation? Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's broader strategy of sowing chaos, we can see how emotional conditioning through art is a subtle but effective means of manipulating humanity and undermining the foundations of reason and critical thought. The desire for entertainment, the tendency to trust authority figures, and the lack of awareness about psychological manipulation techniques make societies vulnerable to this form of manipulation. If our emotions are being subtly manipulated, what are the long-term consequences for individual autonomy and societal well-being? The long-term consequences of emotional conditioning are dire, potentially leading to the erosion of individual autonomy, the decline of empathy, and the potential for societal collapse due to a population manipulated beyond critical thought. When people are constantly bombarded with messages that undermine their sense of purpose and meaning, they become more prone to violence, addiction, and other destructive behaviors. What happens when a society loses its ability to think critically and make informed decisions? However, it's important to acknowledge that art can be a powerful tool for promoting positive emotions, inspiring social change, and fostering empathy. Artistic freedom is essential for a healthy society, and censorship can be a dangerous weapon in the hands of those seeking to suppress dissent. Furthermore, it is essential to develop emotional intelligence and critical thinking skills to empower individuals to distinguish between art that is genuinely moving and art that is simply manipulative or exploitative. Could it be that sometimes art is simply cathartic, with no grand plan? Despite these considerations, emotional conditioning through art remains a serious threat to individual autonomy and societal well-being. The crawling chaos seeks to control our hearts and minds through the subtle art of emotional manipulation, but the human spirit, when grounded in authenticity and self-awareness, can reclaim its emotional freedom and create a world where art is a source of inspiration and connection, rather than a tool of control, so long as we fight. If our emotions are being manipulated, can we reclaim our emotional responses and use art to fight back against the chaos. This leads us to a critical question. If our emotions are being manipulated, can we reclaim our emotional responses and use art to fight back against the chaos? Next, we will delve into the power of counter-narratives and artistic resistance, exploring ways to reclaim our emotional freedom and resist the forces of manipulation by supporting independent artists, promoting ethical media consumption, and cultivating emotional intelligence. Building upon the manipulated art, predictive programming, and emotional conditioning, we find that these are not isolated incidents, but intricate pieces of a larger puzzle designed to achieve societal breakdown. What if the ultimate goal isn't merely control of information, but the erosion of the very fabric of shared reality, leaving individuals adrift in a sea of uncertainty and mistrust, primed for NYARLATHOTEP's influence? We are now on the precipice of the final, terrifying step, the dissolution of consensus itself. Societal breakdown is not merely political disagreement, but a state where shared values, common sense, and agreed-upon facts dissolve, leaving behind chaos and pervasive mistrust. This goes beyond the usual ebb and flow of political discourse. It is a fundamental fracturing of the social contract, where even the most basic assumptions about the world are thrown into question. As society crumbles, are we unwittingly paving the way for the crawling chaos to ascend? The purpose of this section is to examine how NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence uses the manipulation of art, truth, and emotion to erode reality, leading humanity down a path to collective madness. How can the systematic dismantling of truth and reason serve as an invitation for ancient, unknowable horrors to enter our world? By examining historical precedents and modern manifestations, we aim to understand the insidious nature of this erosion and its potential consequences. Historically, societal breakdowns have been preceded by periods of intense manipulation of information, art, and propaganda. Consider the collapse of the Roman Republic, a gradual descent into civil war fueled by partisan rhetoric and the demonization of political opponents, or the wars of religion, where misinformation and propaganda inflamed sectarian violence, shattering the shared religious identity of Europe. Even the French Revolution, born from ideals of liberty and equality, quickly devolved into a reign of terror fueled by radical ideologies and the manipulation of public sentiment, showing how easily noble intentions can be twisted. But what role did the manipulation of information play in destabilizing these societies? In each of these historical examples, the manipulation of information, art, and propaganda played a key role in destabilizing societies and undermining their shared sense of reality. The printing press, for example, was instrumental in disseminating revolutionary ideas during the Reformation, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church and creating deep divisions within European society. Contrast these historical examples with the speed and scale of modern information warfare. Has technology created new and more effective ways to shatter our shared reality? The internet and social media have amplified the potential for manipulation exponentially. Modern methods, fueled by algorithms and artificial intelligence, make manipulation more effective, more targeted, and more difficult to detect. The creation and spread of deepfakes, for example, can erode trust in visual evidence, while the use of bots and trolls can amplify divisive narratives and create the illusion of widespread support for extremist views. But how can we define this breakdown of reality in the context of such technological advancement? A breakdown of reality can be defined as a state where a society's ability to agree on basic facts and values crumbles. This extends beyond political disagreement to a fundamental inability to communicate, share experiences, and build consensus. Key elements of reality, such as trust in institutions, common sense, shared history, and the ability to discern truth, are eroded by manipulation, leaving individuals vulnerable to disinformation and susceptible to the influence of chaotic forces. What happens when these pillars of reality begin to crumble? Trust in institutions is undermined by corruption, scandal, and the perception of bias. When people lose faith in government, media, and scientific institutions, they become more susceptible to conspiracy theories and alternative narratives. Common sense is eroded by the constant bombardment of conflicting information and the blurring of lines between fact and fiction. Shared history is rewritten to serve political agendas, creating divisions and animosity between different groups. Perhaps most insidiously, the ability to discern truth is weakened by sophisticated disinformation campaigns and the proliferation of fake news. Is there a point when skepticism turns into self-destruction? It's crucial to clarify the distinction between healthy skepticism and the kind of all-encompassing distrust that leads to societal breakdown. Healthy skepticism involves questioning claims, demanding evidence, and considering alternative viewpoints. The kind of all-encompassing distrust that leads to societal breakdown, however, is characterized by a rejection of all established sources of information, a belief in baseless conspiracy theories, and a willingness to accept unsubstantiated claims as truth. This sowing of discord is a hallmark of NYARLATHOTEP's influence. But what are some modern examples of this distrust at play? Consider the rise of conspiracy theories in the digital age and their impact on public discourse. Take QAnon, for instance, a sprawling conspiracy theory that originated in the darkest corners of the internet and quickly spread to mainstream consciousness. This movement, fueled by cryptic messages and unsubstantiated claims, eroded common sense, undermined trust in institutions, and even incited real-world violence, as seen in the January 6th attack at the U.S. Capitol. Does this relentless sowing of distrust and division serve any purpose beyond chaos? Examine the polarization of political discourse and the decline of civility in online spaces. Political extremists on both sides of the spectrum use inflammatory rhetoric, personal attacks, and the demonization of opponents to create a sense of division and animosity. Online echo chambers amplify these divisions, reinforcing existing beliefs and making it increasingly difficult to engage in constructive dialogue, building walls around individuals. Now consider the spread of misinformation and disinformation through social USA. The 2016 U.S. presidential election, for example, was heavily influenced by disinformation campaigns originating from foreign countries. These campaigns used social media to spread false and misleading information about candidates, parties, and political issues, with the goal of sowing discord and undermining faith in the democratic process, which ultimately worked. Finally, explore the increasing lack of trust in mainstream media and scientific institutions. While it is important to critically evaluate information from all sources, the deliberate spread of disinformation about scientific findings, such as climate change or vaccines, can have dangerous consequences, exploiting skepticism to further doubt legitimate science. When distrust becomes the norm, what is left? Connecting these examples to NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence, we can see how the breakdown of reality is the ultimate goal of his manipulation, creating a world where nothing is certain and everything is in disarray, furthering his agenda. The psychological and social factors that make individuals and societies vulnerable to this form of manipulation include confirmation bias, emotional reasoning, and the desire for simple answers to complex problems. But what are the long-term consequences if NYARLATHOTEP succeeds? The long-term consequences of the breakdown of reality are dire, potentially leading to political instability, social unrest, and even societal collapse. When people lose the ability to agree on basic facts and values, it becomes impossible to address shared challenges or build a common future. The ethical implications of manipulating truth and undermining shared reality are profound, raising questions about the responsibility of individuals, institutions, and governments to protect the integrity of information and promote critical thinking. When truth becomes a weapon, what hope do we have for unity? We've explored the ways in which truth and reality are manipulated, highlighting the connection to NYARLATHOTEP's chaotic influence. This brings us to a critical juncture. If our very perception of reality is under attack, can we even fight back, or is NYARLATHOTEP's victory inevitable? As our world becomes increasingly fragmented, is there any hope for restoring a shared sense of truth and meaning? However, it's important to acknowledge the subjective nature of reality and the fact that different people may have different perspectives and interpretations of events. Protecting free speech and allowing for a wide range of viewpoints to be expressed, even those that may be unpopular or controversial, is vital. Yet, we must also hold people responsible for spreading misinformation and disinformation. Responsible use of technology is a must, and some amount of skepticism is healthy. But how do we find a balance between open dialogue and the need to protect against manipulation? The breakdown of reality is a serious threat to individual freedom and social stability. Maintaining a commitment to critical thinking, evidence-based reasoning, and ethical communication is essential to resist the forces that seek to manipulate and control us. The crawling chaos seeks to plunge us into a world of madness and illusion, but the human spirit, when grounded in reason, empathy, and a commitment to truth, can resist his influence and create a world where shared reality prevails, if we can fight it. If reality itself is the battlefield, how can we arm ourselves against such an insidious enemy? This leads us to a crucial question. If our very perception of reality is under attack, can we even fight back, or is NYARLATHOTEP's victory inevitable? Next, we'll discuss strategies for critical thinking, media literacy, and personal resilience. As we draw our exploration of NYARLATHOTEP to a close, it's time to synthesize the myriad threads we've followed, from ancient myths to modern manipulations. We've traversed dark corners of history and delved into the unsettling potential of technology, all to understand the influence of the crawling chaos. In summary, we've seen NYARLATHOTEP as the embodiment of hidden chaos, subtly manipulating individuals, societies, and technology. This influence manifests through the manipulation of power, echoing the Black Pharaoh archetype, the erosion of reality through technology, commodification of spirituality, predictive programming, and emotional conditioning, and the distortion of truth through controlled opposition, art as manipulation, and societal breakdown. The recurring pattern of deception and the erosion of shared reality emerged as key tactics used to sow discord and undermine stability. What are the broader implications of this pervasive influence? These specific examples connect to larger, universal themes: the human struggle against manipulation, the search for meaning in a chaotic world, and the critical importance of thinking for oneself and maintaining cognitive sovereignty. Does unchecked technological advancement inevitably lead to a Lovecraftian dystopia, where reality itself is fractured and controlled, or do we have the power to choose a different path? Remember, this exploration transcends Lovecraftian horror. It exposes real-world power structures and their potential for corruption, from the Black Pharaoh of ancient times to the social media manipulators of today. The topics we've explored are undeniably unsettling, and acknowledging them can be disheartening. However, it's crucial to remember humanity's capacity for resilience and resistance. Even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit, grounded in reason, empathy, and a commitment to truth, can resist the forces that seek to manipulate and control us. So, continue to question the world around you, seek knowledge, and resist the forces that seek to manipulate and control you. If you're ready to explore more stories like this, uncover hidden truths, and dive deeper into the world of the arcane, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey into the unknown. By subscribing, you join a community of like-minded individuals seeking forbidden knowledge and challenging conventional narratives. In our next video, we'll be exploring other esoteric topics and hidden truths that are sure to challenge your understanding of the world. The crawling chaos walks among us, but vigilance is our only shield. We'll see you in the next video, if the shadows allow it.